Dear mother, I regret to inform you I have no scope to my son.
Yes, right into the sea.
I shan't be returning home. Hello podcast friends, this is Chris. I'm unusually, for the Crate and Crowbar, going to begin this episode with a sort of brief kind of disclaimer, warning about some of the technical issues we hit while recording this episode. This basically never happened to us in a couple of years, 190 episodes of this podcast, but today, or yesterday when we recorded, we did finally hit some computer snags, stuff we didn't see coming to do with disk space and caching on our audio software. Luckily, my worst fears didn't come true and we didn't lose the episode. Actually, we kept the vast majority of it. However, we lost a chunk of a discussion about Dawn of War, which is going to cut off in this episode immediately after I say, this isn't going to be a long bit, but, and for once in my life, that's actually true because we cut off and go straight to questions because, we lost that chunk of discussion, but maybe I'll return to it at a different time. The bit where this gets confusing is twofold. One, we lost a random chunk of a discussion about Far Cry 5 that I didn't want to lose the rest of that bit because it was only a small piece, but it was a bit about the context for Far Cry 5, which has now been more formally unveiled, and the political themes that it's touching on, and we kind of skip from the start of that discussion basically to the midway point of it. And then later in the episode, I think I referred to some things that were discussed during that bit. If you're half listening, which I imagine most of you are, you won't notice, but just in case there's some confusion, there was little chunks that have had to be kind of, little gaps that have had to be smoothed over as we kind of piece the episode back together. As I say though, the vast majority of it is fine. It's just these a few small things. Where it gets a little bit more confusing even than that, however, is, we caught the technical problem about midway, actually before we recorded the question section. And at the time, I thought the problem was much worse than it actually is. I thought we'd lost an entire chunk of the podcast about what remains of Edith Finch. It turns out we didn't, which is great. It means we've got it in the episode and you can listen to it in, an hour and something from now. But it does mean that for the rest of the episode, I particularly refer back to how we've lost this discussion, which you, as the listener to the real episode, won't have lost. I like to think that when something goes slightly wrong on the Crate and Crowbar, it kind of snowballs. And even though we've not had a technical problem to date, and hopefully we'll have another one, somehow we've managed to turn this one into more of a kind of cascading clusterfuck than it would even have been if we'd simply lost an episode. So you're welcome. I'm glad we could reclaim most of the 2.5 hour chat with some rad guests that I hope you'll enjoy. But yeah, and also apologies for any lawnmowers, barking dogs, birds, neighbours, etc. It's extremely hot in Bath, so we had to record this one with the window open so we didn't die of sweating. Something else that I wanted to bring up right before the episode begins, and I will let you crack on with it shortly, is that this has obviously been a very difficult and upsetting and painful week in the UK in the aftermath of the Manchester bombing, and there's no getting around that. At the end of the episode, we do have a discussion about how games as a medium particularly can feel deeply off-putting on the whole in the aftermath of a real tragedy, because games so often present even highly abstracted violence and death. All pop culture does this, but games trade on conflict and often that's violent. In that discussion, I think we don't arrive at a conclusion because I don't think anyone's ever had an adequate answer to the question of how much and if violence should be presented in pop culture and what is appropriate and what isn't. Except to say that it is perfectly reasonable to not want to engage with those themes when something like this has happened. And it occurred to me in editing the podcast, that discussion takes place right at the very end, that these same things are expressed through the podcast that we produce because we are talking about video games. And in the course of talking about video games, as we have done for 190 episodes, we will inevitably be flippant about violence and death, because those are the things that are presented in a kind of normal and harmless way in a video game. And that is pertinent to this episode in terms of our discussions about games like Tokyo 42 and Far Cry 5 and What Remains of Edith Finch, which obviously is a game about mortality. And so I wanted to basically just put a little content warning at the beginning of this episode, not because I think any of the discussions are out of the ordinary for the Crate and Crowbar or games media more generally, but because in a week like this, I wouldn't blame people for not wanting to engage with discussions about violent games. So that's all I'll say, and I'll let you get on with the episode. I hope you enjoy it, and we'll catch you next week. Hello and welcome to episode 190 of the Crate and Crowbar. My name is Chris Thurston, and this afternoon I am joined by Tom Francis.
Hello.
And special guests from Smack,
yeah.
Smack.
Matt Chikstrowski and Sean.
Hello.
Right. Surname. Right. I was like, don't get this wrong. And then I got it wrong.
Yeah, you screwed yourself with all those wrongs.
Yeah.
You get it right.
Yeah, get this right. Sean, right. Turns out saying wrong to yourself over and over again doesn't make...
Okay, we get it. We get
yes.
I get you. I'm not going there.
Neither am I anymore. Welcome to the podcast, gents. Thank you for joining us on this absolutely beautiful afternoon that we've decided to spend inside...
In beautiful Bath. Glorious up here.
Yeah.
Temporarily beautiful Bath.
Enjoy the small slice of it you can see through our desperately necessarily opened window, because it's really, really warm in here.
Is it worth clarifying that we're not all in a bath together?
It's never been previously necessary in the episodes of the podcast, but maybe finally we should lay that one to rest, because that rumor has followed us around.
We will have to do the YouTube video a bit differently this week, though.
Yeah, that's... Yeah, we'll have to, there's fewer smoke and mirrors to kind of avoid catching that illusion, which is now gone. So we're quits on that one. That's okay. We've all made mistakes on the way to this journey to this point. So you guys are having a very exciting week because your game, Tokyo 42, is out next week.
Yes, it is. Yeah, Wednesday on Xbone and Steams. PC Steams.
Under Puck and Xbone.
Yeah. PlayStation coming a little later. So yeah, we're gold.
We gold.
Although we have
always
the game
believe in your soul
in reviewers' hands at the moment, and they are doing some QA for us. So whilst we say we're gold on Steam, they are kind of daily updates as as some reviewer requests some feature or other.
Good features.
Yeah.
Worthwhile requests.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always a weird process, isn't it?
Yeah.
Am I right in saying this is your first game?
Mm-hmm.
That's a speculative voice.
It is, yeah. It is our first game, and it's our first time we've had, fanboys requesting keys constantly, going through all that rigmarole of desperately wanting some people to have keys and use them, but then also fending off the thousands who we don't want to have keys because we can't afford to give that many keys. Mm-hmm. So it's this kind of like push-pull
I think before you do that, you think like, well, what does it matter if you give some keys to some people who like aren't who they say they are? Like, it's not that big a loss really. They're probably not going to buy it anyway. Yeah. And then you discover how many of those false requests you're going to get.
Yeah.
It's just like thousands.
So yeah, I mean, the game's being published by Mode 7. I should say from a PR perspective, Tokyo 42 is being published by Mode 7. I'm supposed to mention the name.
Just keep saying the name as well.
We've received the same feedback on the podcast, is to repeatedly drop the full name of the game you're talking about, because people zone out. Perfectly reasonable thing to do.
And they've set up a portal for people to request keys. Yeah. So we just kind of divert everyone through that.
Right.
So,
can you summarize what the game is for anyone who's not familiar?
Sean?
Sure. Tokyo 42 is a isometric action shooter game. It's set in an open world rooftop rendition of a future Tokyo. And basically you inhabit the body of an assassin. Actually a regular person who's forced into being an assassin by being framed for a murder. And that all makes sense once you put
it seems like you're forced to double down, like
something along those lines. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. If the name doesn't ring a bell, but you have seen the game, it's the one with the really lovely, like neon colors, very tiny scale.
Yeah.
Like people are tiny, and it looks very much like a model to me. It looks like kind of like a thing you'd have on your coffee table.
Yeah, it's got like a sort of tilt shift effect. It's like this really colorful version of Tokyo. And the gameplay is kind of, we've spoken about it being like a mix between GTA and Syndicate. But for us, there was also a lot of elements of Worms. So it's like an isometric physics-based combat, open world adventure thing. With really tiny graphic. We're calling it like GTA for ants.
What is this, GTA for ants?
If someone hasn't played the first 41 Tokyo games, is this an issue?
Well, we might hear a bit more about Tokyo 41.
Yeah, its predecessor, but can't really say too much about that right
We're
now.
not supposed to talk about
That's a weird PR direction to be going in, where you're not refusing to talk about the
Previous
predecessor.
games.
Yeah, exactly.
Embargo.
We weren't not ready to talk about previous games in the series at this point.
It's the Benjamin Button PR strategy.
But it's like, I mean, Tom said Neo, but it's more like a pastel. I mean, I remember because you guys came on the PC Gamer Weekend live stream back in March, February. Jesus. Back in the ancient past. We don't talk about the past under any circumstances. It's daytime cyberpunk, right? Which is a sort of interesting twist on.
Yeah, we wanted to turn the whole thing on its head. Like in some respect, just to kind of stand out, but also because, doing cyberpunk, it's very easy to get caught in the trap of the sort of stereotypical dark noir stuff. That we all know so well, the neon lit. And, don't get me wrong, I still love seeing, every day I see some new artist do some sort of rendition of that, and it's awesome to see. Especially the pixel artists, they do amazing stuff. But we wanted to kind of turn that on its head and do like a really bright daytime version and see how that would play out. And it's funny because it almost takes it away from the cyberpunk genre when you do that. Because, if you put it dark with neon and rain and whatever, then it's like, that's a dystopian cyberpunk thing, obviously, Whereas if you literally just change the color palette, it's like, well, what is this now?
Maybe this place isn't so bad.
It's like a popcorn or bubblegum cyberpunk, look, So it's quite weird.
Yeah, I mean, when we did a bit of research in Tokyo, we went over there a couple times, or once I did anyway, but, we found that it was daytime quite a lot as well.
Good research.
Yeah, that was the weird part, yeah. Because you never expect, from what you see on films and whatever, it's just like, it's obviously on the dark side of the earth,
Yeah. It's like, there's not like a moment in I suppose that's always the thing, this is a deep cut. Have you seen the weird deleted endings of Blade Runner where Deckard's just driving a car through a perfectly modern, perfectly well-lit forest?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's completely, there's no way that should exist in the universe you're from, right?
Yeah.
Like, no one goes to like the Cotswolds in the universe.
Where does that come from all of a sudden? Yeah.
Yeah, and so am I right in saying that the game started out more of a multiplayer thing and then developed a single player, or was it the other way around? Because I know you're kind of doing two different things with it, right?
Yeah, I mean, so initially when Magic and I got together to make the game, we envisioned it as its multiplayer form, as it is now. And we built out a prototype based on the kind of arena game loop that's in the deathmatch multiplayer. And then that's how we got the interest from Mode 7, and we developed an open world single player from that after that.
Yeah, I mean, when we started, we had no idea of how the industry worked. We had no idea if we'd be able to get any money to make it. But we still wanted to put something out because, when we'd started playing around with it, we'd found a game that we really liked. So, and it kind of, the way it got set up is that it worked out quite fortunately for us, because we at the very worst, we're going to release our demo to the public just as like, maybe some freeware or like as a super cheap, like £1, £2 sort of thing. So we had already wrapped it as a sort of finished product, before we went to any industry events. And it turns out that's exactly what they want to see. They want to see well polished, instead of like concepts or things written on paper. They want to see this vertical slice sort of thing. So, we went into our first set of meetings with, what was, just was kind of pie in the sky of idea of getting some money, but we weren't expecting anything. And then they were like, yeah, cool, we'll give you some money. And we were like, okay, shit. Well, that's unexpected. So then the multiplayer sort of arena thing turned into a single player thing. And obviously the thinking behind that was, you can't guarantee a multiplayer community on a game. So we have to provide an entertainment product, be there any community or not. So. Yeah.
There's, so when you say the arena thing, the multiplayer doesn't function like for people who aren't aware, it doesn't function like an arena deathmatch game, because it's a lot about the stealth element and the crowd simulation element.
Sure. I mean, in terms of an arena, it's kind of, Magic's built very distinct little worlds that you can see all of at one time, as like provided you can rotate on that point. So the arena is like just the level, but yeah, as you say, the mechanics kind of like start out as a sort of stealth hide and seek kind of game where you're trying to find out in amongst the morass of other civilians in the world or the level, who your enemies are. You're watching for strange behavior, for people picking up ammo on the sly, or, you know, if a dude's wearing a coat, you kind of...
One of those two things, owns a gun or wearing a coat.
Yeah, so there's a bit of a spy party sort of phase at the beginning.
Yeah, and then you have tools to sniff people out during that phase as well. You know, our tracker cat, which is a cat and named for its tracking capabilities. It can sniff out other players and follow them sneakily. And they might like suddenly find that there's a cat at their heels and try like shoot and scare it off. But by that point, you know, they've been...
It kind of gives the game away.
Yeah. And then if you kill them or they kill you, you spawn in one of the random doorways and you're a new skin and it all starts over again. You know, suddenly you're incognito.
And presumably, like, at that point, you've got the jump on them because you know what they look like,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah, if you're keeping track.
Yeah.
So there's quite a lot of different different ways the game kind of plays out. Sometimes it is like a sort of waves of in and out of stealth, and sometimes it just evolves into constant grenades and, you know, rockets and stuff.
Yeah.
But then someone just kind of takes it upon themselves to hide themselves, and then suddenly everyone else gets super tense because, like, Jesus, there's some guy hidden with a sword waiting to slash you, so you got to be careful. So yeah.
You said before that the combat is physics based.
Yep. Even online, yeah.
How does that kind of manifest itself?
Grenades that bounce around.
Grenade rolls down a hill.
Grenade rolls down a hill, Tom. This is
The bullet speed is, obviously it's like toned down quite a lot. So they're not realistic bullet speeds. You can dodge them.
Right.
You know, you see them coming at like kind of slow pace and you can dodge them, which kind of puts emphasis more on like, very fast automatic weapons, and you get weapon balance based on the bullet speed rather. You know, not everything's the same speed. Like a sniper rifle, for example, has got a much, you know, faster bullet, but much slower fire rate. You know, like that kind of thing. But like a machine gun or a minigun or a Fimi gun.
Yeah. Just name. I don't even know if I should go into why that's.
Definitely go into that.
Okay, well, there was a friend I had who had this condition called phimosis, which would. What's the age group of your?
Oh my god.
we are rated 18 plus on iTunes.
Which would make his foreskin too tight, so when he got an erection, the blood would go in but not out. So it would kind of mushroom out.
Jesus Christ.
So we've got like a fat version of the minigun, which kind of reminded me of phimosis as a condition.
Wow.
So there's a little bit of inside info. That's like too much,
That's
isn't
an
it?
amazing too much information. You know, normally we end up in a weird place with this podcast, like somewhere around the 2 hour mark, like deep into the podcast. Usually the drinking is part of that. When you get there, and we've gotten there in 13 and a half minutes. A new record.
We are very sorry.
No, and never apologize. Maybe apologize to your friend.
Well,
Hopefully he won't hear this. So.
Yeah. Well, that's the podcast title sorted.
call that one a preemptive strike as well.
Yeah. I probably had a list of super professional sounding interviewer style questions in my head, but they have gone now. All of them lost to town, like Tears in Rand.
Lost the time like Tears in the Rain, yes.
Yeah.
We haven't ripped off that line in our game at any point, have we? No, we certainly have. Please no one play the game.
This PR strategy has really backfired for you guys.
No, remember, what you mean to say to get the PR right is please no one play Tokyo 42.
Oh, yes, of course.
Make sure they know what not to play. So one of the most unusual things about your game, other than the art style, I would say, is the fact that when you rotate the camera, it rotates by 45 degrees, not 90 degrees. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
That's very strange.
Yeah.
Every other isometric looking game always like forces you to rotate by 90 degrees. So the whole
full,
thing.
the Fez sort of, the Fez full thing. Yeah, I mean, I think it's because we're at an off angle. And it's weird because when we started making the game, it was going to be a pixel art thing.
Right.
We very quickly realized how much work that would be. Pixel art is actually an absolute nightmare to work with. It's just anyone who does it, and I know that you do.
I don't. John Roberts does.
Well, you work with it.
Yeah.
You know?
What I did is I found someone who could do it and then did not ask any questions about how it was done.
Absolute mountain of work. And with us, we wanted to have vertical gameplay, which I don't know if you guys can think of any games, but I can't think off the top of my head any game that's properly done that from that perspective. Had vertical gameplay. If it has happened, it's been much more focused and it's kind of maybe in some linear sort of things like Lara Croft Go or whatever.
Yeah.
Temple of the Guardian of the Light.
Yeah.
I guess only in the context of very rigid tiers of levels where things are kind of really defined, right? We wouldn't fit with the physicsy kind of combat system at all.
So, I mean, that's the one thing that was quite, it's quite new in Tokyo 42 is this kind of freedom of movement with the isometric perspective. Now, kind of going back to the 45 thing, we had tested actually 360 degrees of movement, and it's just not responsive enough. And especially considering that in our game, you end up in combat situations which are often quite fast. You need to kind of just be able to control, you need to be able to get around to a certain angle very quickly. So instead of like sort of someone learning the length of hold, it's just a 3-tap sort of thing or whatever. So you can really quickly rotate as you're in the middle of some blazing firefight, with some nudists or, some sort of old Tokyo punks or something.
So how does the single player work? Is it a like linear series of story-based missions, or has it some kind of meta game? Or?
Yeah, I mean, that's how it starts off. You kind of get thrown into the story, and not long after the first couple of missions, you are allowed to roam the world, and at that point, you can kind of go anywhere. Is that sort of like a series of discrete locations that you travel between, or is it all one continuous? It's all one continuous world, which is fun for optimization.
Yeah.
It's super fun. So we've kind of got one discrete location, which is the beginning bit, and that was our first sort of test zone for the open world sort of map. And then after that, you get to the main island of rooftops, I guess you can call it. And very much like Far Cry, in order to progress to certain sections of this open world, there'll be guard posts blocking your passage. And you can clear those guard posts or sneak through them, but until you do that, you can't get to those other areas. If you play the story linearly, or whatever, if you play all the story missions, then they will eventually take you to all those places. But at any point during the story, you can just stop and explore and roam and have a look around.
Cool.
Yeah, so
that sounds like quite a ambitious thing, like starting with this arena shooter that already worked, adding single player to that, let's do open world. That seems like quite a big...
I mean, it's been our sort of running line over the last while is that we're just complete idiots to do that, because we can't, I don't know how we got there. How did we get from like, the first thing was obviously, single player sounds fine. And then, I don't know, it must have been days before we got from there to open world. How did we even make that decision?
It just seemed cool, man.
Yeah.
I think. It seemed like we were like, game's easy.
This is like common for people making their first game. What's uncommon is that you actually finished it.
Yeah. That's a I mean, not without pain though.
Yeah.
Due to this decision. Obviously, it's a very hard format to work with, open world. And it does take a lot of sort of experience and foresight. None of which we have. So we ran into so many roadblocks. It was like, this is us just like making this pain for ourselves. I wouldn't recommend people making their first game make an open world game at all. So
I would say even for your second game, it's also a mistake.
You stopped just shy of MMO, which is the point at which you completed a full round of doomed Kickstarter bingo.
Yeah, it's supposed to be the sort of the death traps are 3D multiplayer and having people in it.
Yeah.
So
having
you got a fair few of those.
I mean, talking about MMO, we actually had considered some sort of invasion style.
Like a Dark Souls kind of mechanic.
Yeah, totally. And you could just, so one thing that happens during the open world, after a certain point in the story, you start finding that there's, assassins called nemesis that come searching for you and will just hunt you down with various weaponry. So it's like kind of, you hear when they're there and then you're like in a bit of panic mode, and that's where Tracker Cat actually comes into play.
In the single player.
Yeah. So we thought, how rad it would be if you had player invasions as the nemesis. We didn't get there. I'm very glad we decided to push for that, but maybe later.
When did
42.
Yeah.
You can't do the Tokyo Drift pun because it's just
exactly. 2 Tokyo 2.
Well, yeah, Tokyo 420.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, you did that.
Yeah.
That'll go down well.
Dan Marshall, I think, on Twitter did an amazing rendition of our poster, Tokyo 420.
Yeah.
Oh, really? So when did you start it?
We started sort of concepting in our spare time, sort of after hours, early 2015. And then we hooked up with Mode 7 around August, and the deal was done, and we were kind of kicked off by October of 2015. So that's when we went into full time. So now it's been a year and 7 months, I think, or so, I don't know how.
Just over 18 months, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty damn good for.
Yeah. So we'd scheduled it for 18 months.
Right.
And I think we actually fell within that. There's been other sort of technical issues with platforms and stuff that has pushed it over. But I think we hit our deadline.
That's crazy.
Pretty much. So yeah, everything that we'd kind of said we did, we did. Said we'd do, we did. And yeah, and you know, we've kind of thought about it, and it is weird that we managed to keep to the deadline, and this game hasn't taken the 3 or 4 years that it should have.
Yeah. Especially since you know, saying how many roadblocks you hit that you didn't foresee.
Yeah. And I think that's all down to us making the decision to go with a publisher. Because I think if we were independent, we wouldn't have had, you know, primarily the advice and the support from them. You know, the money's good. But also the drive that comes from working kind of for/with someone, this
absolutely.
kind of slightly colder relationship, even though we're very good friends with them, but that, you know, knowing that we're a bit responsible for, you know, them, you know, if we kind of just do the indie thing of just like, I know we'll just take a few months out and regather, you know, get our lives back together, that wouldn't have been very useful.
You're not allowed to get your lives back together without Mode 7.
No, I mean, their experience has been so valuable to us, you know, and it's been especially relevant because they're like, you know, a relatively smaller studio themselves. So like when we signed up with them, we were like immediately knew that this would be like a great fit because they would understand the woes of a small team and all that stuff. And like, yeah, technically, you know, like everything, they've just been like super helpful. It's awesome.
You guys were the first game they published as well, so I imagine that was a difference for those guys as well. I mean, we'll probably talk to Paul in about this when we have them on the pod, because I think that's the plan. But
yeah, it definitely felt at times like they were testing out a few things on us. Yeah. You know, testing out tones,
Are we ready
how
to
to write emails.
That day he just suddenly yelled at you for no reason.
What? We're friends! Stop shouting!
Well, we have like, we have kind of surprised them with a few little scope creeps here and there, which might have been a little bit stressful.
Yeah, we went to a meeting the one day, and you know, we've got this open world shooter thing, and they're very kind of scope conscious, because that's how you waste money. And we pitched up one day and we'd built a racing game.
Literally,
was it called Tokyo Drift?
If it wasn't called Tokyo Drift,
it's actually in there. You can find it. It's hidden in there. There's a racetrack comes down over the entire city, and you do a little race,
motorbike race.
So yeah, they
you're
kind
missing
of
the important question: is it called Tokyo Drift?
Nope.
No.
Okay,
it's not named anything, but it's we actually were doing a multiplayer level, which we wanted to like rip off Summoner's Rift.
Right.
But we were going to call it Tokyo Rift, and then it was like, wait, Tokyo Drift is better. And so back and forth, yeah.
It does pay homage to another reference, like a very important one. The movie Redline.
Redline, yeah. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but that is the most epic racing anime out there. It's just such like hyper animation.
So
everything
cool.
is extreme and blown out, and the kind of camera perspective is super fish-eyed a lot of the time, so you get a lot of that weird
like sort of warp.
Yes, weird warp when they're racing, you know, because of the speed and stuff. It's such an epic. It's not old, it's kind of contemporary. Yeah. Definitely recommend Redline to anyone.
Cool. Sorry, you were saying though about racing and scope creep.
Yeah. So they were kind of, they were like, it's funny because, you know, the first reaction should be like, that's great, that's awesome, you built that. And you could see their first reaction was actually like, you know,
what the fuck are you doing?
And then like, you know, within a split second they were like, that's great, you know, good guys. And no, obviously I'm joking. They were kind of happy about it because it didn't take that much time.
That's great, stop it.
Yeah.
That's great, but never do anything like this again.
I prefer if we could discuss these sort of things before you spend a week doing them. No, I mean, I think we've personally been very conscious of that, but you need to break out sometimes. You know, you can't be doing the same thing, you know, which we were doing for a year and sort of 5 months, I'd say, like sort of, you know, with a few weeks here and there of 20-hour days and, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Without jumping into something different every now and then, just to kind of break the rhythm.
The thing I've kind of learnt lately is, I always try and do things in priority order. I want to make sure, you know, the thing I'm working on is the most important thing left to do. But every now and then you just really don't feel like working on that next thing. It's just either too similar or maybe it's not similar enough to what the thing you're just working on. And every now and then I just like, there's a feature that's on my list somewhere. I can't even find it. It's so low down, but I really want to do that right now. It's just, it's bothering me that feature isn't in there and I can make it. And lately I've learned just to cave to that impulse every time. Just do it.
So important for sanity, man.
Yeah.
I completely concur. Absolutely. Need to do that.
Yeah.
Also, we've developed a little bit of a policy, you know, in our budding game studio that, in any game we make, there will be a secret that only Smack Games knows about in the game. So there might be one or two of them.
Did you not just break that?
No, we've got a more secret.
Okay. Now you've just done that.
What, by saying...
People know it exists now.
Oh, that's fine.
Oh, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fine. You trust the internet not to find things when they go looking for it.
Yeah, it's not going to take them more than a couple of hours, but...
What a beautiful couple of hours that'll be.
I was actually, I think, it was Ed McMillan was kind of decrying that it kind of almost wasn't worth putting secrets in, Binding of Isaac's games because, people just data mine it.
Yeah,
like he will put something in that's absurdly hard to find by playing, but you can just kind of scrape the files and look for anomalies and people just pull it out. And so he was kind of despairing that he's not sure it's even worth doing
we know about that, and we were fairly careful about the file naming and stuff for our secrets. So
actually, I was I don't know if I can say I was involved with the Frog Fractions 2 ARG, because a puzzle piece for the Frog Fractions 2 ARG was in my game Morphblade, but no one ever found it.
Oh, well. Sweet.
And
cross game puzzle.
There was like
an
ARG thing where puzzle pieces were in various games, and there was some redundancy built in because my puzzle piece was also in someone else's game, and they found that one first. So
okay,
this didn't come up. But that was another thing where like we had to think about, well, can't it be data mined? Can't they look through the
absolutely
the files and find an image that it's very clear these like sigil pieces were very clear.
Yeah.
And so it had to, what I actually did was upload it to my web space, and the game itself doesn't contain the file, but when you find it would download the file there.
Right, so it's a sort of abstract link. Yeah, that's crazy.
Weirdly, we've had this exact issue with HackMud, which is the hacking game that I'm writing, because it's a game about teaching people to hack with JavaScript. Right. So if they data mine something, is that not in some way the game?
Yeah, exactly.
And you know, a lot of the stuff that I'm working on and the stuff that I'm writing for the game is explicitly like a little bit more structured and a little bit more narrative than the generated content that as a multiplayer mod it generates for every player, because that's the idea, is to get more scripted things that are easier for new players to get used to, which is the point. Yeah. However, the more experienced players, because I want to put Easter eggs in there for the more experienced players, but the more experienced players, especially the really experienced ones, kind of know how to get around Sean, who's the developer, his like ways of patching the game. So when he adds files to the game, his like GitHub commits, they kind of know how to figure them out now. Because the hack, like, it's like, at what point is the hacking but too much? Like, you know what I mean? But it's like, no, don't look at that. And so like, you know, the best example of this is I just added it's a super simple script, but it's because we kind of needed to go straight to like basic level help script. So, but I don't want anything in the game to be, because it's like cyberpunk theme, and I don't want anything in the game to be outside the game. So everything is in character. All information is delivered in character, and this is explicitly a character has made a script to help new players who don't know what to do. And you can ask it a question, say, I need X, and then it will tell you X, and it gives you a list of the things you can ask it. And the whole Easter egg is, and those are the sort of standard things you'd expect, and the whole Easter egg is there's a million other things you can ask that script that it has responses for that are written, but it teaches you something about trying things with variables, like, you know, not just doing what you're told, but like, what happens if I enter this weird variable on this?
Play around a bit.
Yeah, play around a bit. And like, I was checking the official like HackMud Discord, not the official, like where the community hangs out, and like within about 6 minutes of that thing going up, they had already figured out how to like crack open that script so they could see all of the arguments it would accept, not just the ones that are listed.
Wow.
And then it's just like, yeah, and then someone else is like, okay, I've done a digest. These ones are all boring. These 6 are funny. Like, but I mean, you've made this really efficient.
Like, I mean, with HackMud, you're setting yourself up for that.
Yeah,
because you're basically speaking to people who like doing that sort of thing.
Exactly. So it's not exactly a failure, but it's that kind of thing. It's like like, sort of like I'm disappointed but proud.
Yeah.
It's like
a bit of a double-edged sword.
Yeah, I was like, I was hoping you'd discover this in 6 months and in these areas, and it's like, oh, all right, fine, you agree. That was 3 hours work to furnish you with 6 minutes.
You know what they do nowadays is that I know EA's got the huge puzzle community in the Battlefield games.
Yeah, oh, of course.
They're figuring out their puzzles and codes and whatever. And they hide it all behind patches. So they'll do it in sections. They do very complex puzzles that you have to figure out in the Battlefield games. But pressing this button at certain times and then followed by this, and then it's randomized Morse code over a period of time or whatever. But they only release the solutions in sort of updates, DLC. So that way they can kind of protect the puzzle from being totally smashed apart within a first couple of weeks, and for people finding the solutions and that being the way to solve the puzzle. Yeah. So I think
sorry.
Yeah, no, as far as I know, they've got some of the most intense sort of money being thrown at puzzles.
Yeah. It was a bit sad that was kind of how Fog Factions 2 actually eventually was found, was that the game it was buried inside had a big update, and at that point people were just monitoring updates for all games, and they just saw that it was conspicuously big or happened at just the right time, that it was probably Fog Factions 2, and so that's how they found out. They did follow the ARG and they solved all the puzzles and stuff, but the actual kind of final straw was just like, oh, that game's been updated or something. It's Fog Factions 2.
I think at some point, like, how ARGs are solved stops mattering so much. It's just like, this is just the adventure we all went on. It's like, whatever kind of mad way you decided to.
I used to love playing Spelunky back in the day when it was PC only and it was free and it was still being developed on a regular basis, and so not only was it being like bugs fixed and stuff, but new items were being added.
Right.
And Derek could always, I can't remember if he just never said what the items were, but there would be at least one item per patch where he just didn't say what it was. It just said new item added, and everyone would be like, "What the fuck is the new item?" And so they'd be playing frantically to find out what it is. And like one of them was just like a new feature added, and he wouldn't say what it was. And it turned out to be that while you're firing the bow, which is a really rare item that no one really uses, even if they do find it, but if you draw an arrow back while you're holding that, if you also hit the bomb key, you'll attach a bomb to the arrow you're about to fire, and then that can like stick in walls and also blow up. It was like, that was the thing I was never going to find by myself, and someone else found it in a day or two. And it almost doesn't matter really if you don't find it yourself. It's just having that period of mystery when you're told there's something in there and you don't know yet. Even if you find out the next day from someone else and you're not involved in it at all, it's still kind of cool to have that.
It's awesome, man.
It's the not knowing.
Magic was quite into the Chiliad mystery. I don't know if you know.
Oh yeah, the GTA one.
Oh yeah, the GTA thing.
That was also updated in a patch, wasn't it?
I don't think it ever went anyway.
I thought a patch changed something at some point, like years later, a patch happened and everyone...
I need to double check because I haven't been to r/Chiliad in a while. But I think there was a few puzzles in the game involving just finding flying saucers, but there was an implication in that game that there would be a jetpack hidden somewhere, in Los Santos.
On that mural, right?
Because there is a very, very obvious depiction of a jetpack. And no one ever found it, and people tried a lot of things.
Yeah, a lot of hours were sunk into that.
Yeah, I must have put in about 50 hours just on the Chiliad thing. But I mean, I was not working with the teams that Reddits can put together, so I was kind of like, actually, it's fairly pointless. Me as a sort of individual trying to tackle this. I'd rather just go with the hive mind.
Yeah, I think that's a sort of interesting, because I think, honestly, I do think these sorts of mysteries are like some of the coolest things about games generally, particularly like open world games or any kind of systemic game where like people can spread these rumors and they catch on, and it's it's as old as people in the playground saying, "Oh, have you heard? If you do this, if you jump 6 times in Mario, you can play as Triple Mario." Like, whatever, yeah, it's that shit. Like, but there's definitely like a fine line between making it so complicated that it can only be solved by like a Redditor who happens to have like a spectrometer at home.
Well, there's been that with some of the sound bites. Literally hidden within the spectrums of sound.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's like, oh, just don't worry guys, I got this. Like, or making it something that everyone can find and therefore will be found like almost immediately, at which point it probably becomes an Easter egg rather than like an ARG. And this, I don't know, like I love that. Like for me, I think that's when games tend to come alive, is the moment where you do something that you feel should work, but you've been in no way flagged is going to work, and you get something back from the game is sort of like where the magic comes from. And that's probably why these things are hidden away. Prey, which we'll be end up talking about a lot this week in other contexts, has a lot of that stuff in it. Like, it has a lot of stuff that you think should work, and you go and try it, and it does. But it does feel like, as a marketing exercise, that stuff is pushed so much towards, like, well, we've got to make sure it isn't solved in a week, therefore it has to be, like, sort of, like, international espionage level encryption, just to kind of protect it for a day. It's kind of an interesting issue.
Yeah, I've given up on that stuff. All of heat signatures data files are just open there. It's just plain text. You can just read them and edit them. And so if you want to like conquer the whole galaxy, you could just open up the galaxy file and replace all the ownership variables with your own thing.
Well done, you won the game. You got your money's worth.
And so we'll do something if you conquer the whole galaxy, but there's no point in whatever we do. It will be with the understanding that you can easily unlock this just by cheating. And in some ways, I mean, you get something out of that as well, by exposing that stuff, because, for Gunpoint, I made a level editor, but it was a little bit limited. It was kind of like, simplified to make it easy for people to use. And some people didn't like those limitations. And because the data format that it saved its levels in was just completely plain and readable, someone just made their own editor, and just read those files, and it's way better editor than mine.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's the one game I think recently that's been doing this stuff quite well is Elite Dangerous. They've had a really good line in like quite successful ARGs by all accounts, but I think it's because they combine like spectrometer analysis of alien sound waves with the fact that it's such a vast game. Like, cause they have like a procedurally generated cosmos of a billion star systems. They can hide something somewhere and be reasonably sure no one's going to fucking find this because there aren't enough humans. Like,
same as no one was supposed to find each other in the other infinite space game that we shall not mention.
Yeah, well, precisely. But at least in this context, it's like, well, we can do something with this system where our heat maps show no player has ever been, and the closest player is like 60 hours in the wrong direction. Yeah. So like, and we'll put something here, and then we'll drip feed clues that'll eventually lead people here, but no one's going to just stumble upon it.
Yeah. Well, we've got a housemate who makes it his business to travel into the uncharted areas of Elite Dangerous. I mean, he spent like 5 days going in one direction and no one's ever been before. Like awesome. 5 real life days.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah. So maybe he'll be finding out.
He got to the center of the universe or whatever.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Mm. I think he's on his way back.
Nothing there, lads.
It was more space.
Literally is still on his way back, and this has been a couple of weeks now, so we should probably check on him. Have you opened his door?
I think I saw him this morning. He kind of mumbled at me.
Was it frame shift drive? Not
friendship
working.
Drive.
Friendship drive.
Active, yeah. Full scoop, engaged. I played a lot of that game. I do really like it, but it is because it's almost like, do you know what's a nice break from video games where stuff happens?
Yeah. Yeah, I quite enjoyed it for a while. Eventually it did become quite a mission. Because I did, my journey wasn't quite as, long as his. I tried to get to the Witch's Hat, which is kind of like nearby to inhabited space. And it just killed me. I got there and then I was like, God, now I have to fly back. I mean, I've enjoyed this experience, but there's only so many boiling suns you can see before it's not quite as sort of fascinating. And really I was like, maybe I should start smoking weed again. It's been a long time, but, if there's anything that's going to allow me to survive this, it's going to be that.
It's funny, in some ways, maybe Elite Dangerous is a precursor to what the reality of human spaceflight will be, which is that, like, human beings can get used to fucking anything. Like, oh, look, it's the most spectacular cosmic vista you'll ever experience again. Does anyone have any weed?
Spaceflight will just teach us, like, we just need to be stoned for this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, if we're going to do this and it's going to take years, let's just, enjoy ourselves.
Yeah, what a fantastic game though. It's like one of those things that, I think it's, Gary from, Gary's Modern Rust. Space Punch.
Yeah.
He released an article a while back about how the Rust community, constantly demands, these people who've been playing the game for, 5,000 hours are they're kind of starting to write reviews going, this game is shit, with their 5,000 hours. And eventually, yes, they got bored of it, so now it's shit to them. So he was complaining that they then introduce new features to make these guys who've had 5,000 hours happy again. But that time shortens each time they release features. So they might be happy now for 3 months, and then it's 2 months, and then it's a couple of weeks. And then certain players have just hit this point after so long that they just are constantly complaining. And I think some of these long form games are just, it's something that people haven't figured out how to deal with. Like, what happens when someone wants that experience for 10,000 hours and the game cannot deliver that? It cannot be interesting. Because with Elite, it was completely fascinating to me for about 100 hours, which is a lot.
It's a lot.
And
the trouble is, you like, if you can make a game that's good for 100 hours, you've done an amazing thing.
Exactly.
But you have to end it at the 100 hours. You have to tell the player, it's over now, you've done it, well done.
You won!
And then that player will walk away saying, that was amazing, I loved it, like, recommend it to all their friends. But if you let them keep playing, then they'll end up hating it, because they won't stop until they do.
Absolutely.
And they might not even stop when they do, apparently.
Just do one of those, like, mobile app things where it, like, pops up with a star rating. So how do you rate it? Do you enjoy this?
As soon as your rating goes down, they just cut you off. Fuck off then. Well, get out.
It's actually not a bad idea to trigger the end sequence.
Because that's the tricky thing. If you knew that value for everybody, you could have the game end at the time that it should end for that person. But it's just different for everybody. There are people who can only spare 3 hours. And
It feels like it's less of an issue for multiplayer games where the developer isn't responsible for kind of providing that engagement, because that's what comes from balance patches and things like that. And, it's a living game, so people stay. Well, I think maybe it's not so much that people don't get burnt out because they do. It's that eventually, it's that players probably are better on average at figuring out where that burnout is coming from. Like, it's not like, this game is fucking bullshit. I can't believe after 8,000 hours, I feel like I've seen everything. Whereas in a multiplayer game, it's like I played 8,000 hours of Counter-Strike and now it is time for me to move on with my life.
Well, I mean, Arma's that game for me.
Arma, right? Yeah.
I mean, I've gotten bored of it a couple of times, but I still just go back and I just have a blast just running around and it's primarily in multiplayer modes. Because it's so unpredictable. Players are so unpredictable. And especially with a platform like that, you've got, quite complicated controls. So I just enjoy playing with the controls.
Yeah.
Cause that's part of the pleasure of it, is just using them. Because they're quite complex. And then just the multiplayer. I mean, I'm not going to say how many hours I've got in it, because I've got a lot. But it has sustained me over the years. That's just my fallback.
But I suspect if you ever got the need to take a break from it, you wouldn't necessarily go like, oh god, this game's done, I can't believe it. It's just like, well, it's time for me to, I'm the same with Dota. Like, for me, it's like, it's the best game ever made.
Which one?
Dota 2.
Dota, right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, like, I'm in the end of the longest break I've ever taken from it, and I'm starting to play again. It's kind of like, I remember this. It's the greatest game ever made. And, that's just, it's because that relationship I don't think you ever put it on the developer quite so much. It's almost like when it's a multiplayer game, and the game itself is almost just like an entity.
Yeah.
It's like a sport or something, where it's like,
Yeah, and it's defined by its community as much as anything else, and how you play it and your style and what who that leads you to play with, and you can if you're a troll in a game, what kind of people you end up with, and that's kind of your fault,
Yeah, exactly.
And that's something you're fine with.
Whereas I think with the sort of either the massive investment single player games or the sort of, I guess, things in like the sort of survival MMO elite kind of time investment, but you're not spending a lot of time meaningfully interacting with other players spectrum, like that burnout gets put on the developer more, I suspect, because that's kind of, those are the only people who can provide more stuff to do.
I mean, not to go back to, but that's what No Man's Sky hit almost instantly. People kind of, I had the same thing with that. I saw it and I was, bewildered by its depth and wonder. And then I hit the wall of content so quickly. I was like, but that is it. That, what I've experienced has been fantastic, but this is an exact example of where, as you say, there should have been an ending sooner. Just to kind of go, look at what you've experienced. It's been 7 hours of amazing things, which it was. But that's it, guys, for now. And as opposed to this kind of idea that feeling can somehow go on. And I think that's where people got so disappointed.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, like, how people respond to hypothetically infinite variety. It's it's just, technically you're telling me this is infinity, but, like, I'm just seeing a sideways 8. Like, I don't know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
It's just,
it just becomes a number after a while.
Yeah.
I think it's, it's incredibly hard to do infinite visual variety, and that was sort of the promise of No Man's Sky. Not the explicit promise, but when you saw it and you imagined you extrapolated in your mind, what could this be? Like, oh my god, this planet's so different to this planet. Therefore, they'll be different forever. And of course they can't be. Like,
and you see the pattern,
that's the
and
thing
then
you
you're
can't
like,
do.
oh, bugger.
But then a game like Spelunky feels like near infinite mechanical variety. Like the situations that you encounter in a playthrough of that, it's not uncommon to hit one that you've never encountered before, even though I've played it literally 3,000 times. And so that, I think, is a more fruitful direction to go in.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, in terms of generative stuff. Yeah.
And again, I think this is where, like, competitive multiplayer games solve that problem really naturally, because you might have encountered technically every weapon and strategy in the game, but if the metagame is anywhere near healthy, you will never see the same combination of elements
combat
twice,
scenario.
Absolutely. And that means a lot to you, because that is ultimately what you're engaging with. So it's like, I've never seen this particular combination of characters in this particular place on this particular map.
Exactly.
Therefore, I am having a totally new experience.
Yeah, I mean, we just got the PlayStation for the first time in our house, because we kind of wanted a lounge setup, whilst we're kind of going gold now just to play some stuff, and we're playing through the Naughty Dog games.
Yeah, and I've been doing the Uncharted collection as well, actually, so that's been fun.
And obviously they're amazing things, but they're kind of a classic game in that they are levels that you go through.
Yeah.
And whilst they've tied it all together with amazing set pieces and, narrative this and that, it is levels. It's a classic, level 1, level 2, level 3. But then they've got the couple of gameplay styles. So, but they have combat scenarios, which are expertly put together. And it makes it really fun, because each combat scenario, it's not just a mechanic which they're throwing at you over and over again. They're really carefully thinking about each setup and making sure that it feels different from the last setup.
And it does, man.
And
you can tell it feels like it. Absolutely.
Yeah. So they kind of do the other side, where it's the curated thing, which they then end the game. Even though you've been through more scenarios than you might in another game, which just does the same thing over and over again. They know their limitation, in terms of that. They don't, which is money. But yeah. And then the only way you can make stuff more complex is by multiplayering up.
Yeah. It's interesting, because like the issue is, I guess, at its core, like, how much responsibility do game designers have to stop players from ruining games for themselves? It's like,
absolutely.
It's like, if I do this, I hate it. It's like, well, don't do that. But I have to. Like, I'm just going to play it like this. I'm just going to play it. I'm not going to eat. I'm not going to sleep. I'm just going to play it like this. And now I hate it.
That's one thing I've worried about, and we haven't spoken about it too much, but we're inexperienced, and we might have some untested exploits in our game. And there is a potential that we might have to patch some things out later. Because we have some sort of features which we're not fully aware of how they can be used. And as you say, people take the path of least resistance, even if the path of least resistance is so boring and so mind-numbing as to completely destroy their experience.
I was listening to an interview with Sid Meier on the Designer Notes podcast, which is by Soren Johnson, who worked on who's the lead designer of Civ 4, and he's talking to Sid about like the early days of Civilization, and Sid is saying that after release they realized there was a couple of strategies that were just way overpowered. Like I think cavalry was way overpowered, and there was something else. And I was surprised to hear him say that but that was like the good old days before the internet. I was like, why is that good? Isn't it much better than the internet, because you can patch it right away? And but his argument was that in those days, when an exploit was discovered, like one guy discovered it. That was it. It didn't go any further than that. No one else knew about it, so it didn't matter that much for the rest of them.
Yeah, screw that guy.
Do you guys remember? I don't know if you because when we were playing early on, it was in Cape Town. We got our first computer when we were living in England, and we moved to Cape Town. But there was telephone services for cheats. I don't know if you had that here.
Hint hotlines.
Hint hotlines. So you had to call up whatever for cheat codes and
LucasArts vibes.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
The GameSpecs used to have them in the back as well. There'd be just like miscellaneous cheat and hint spreads, which would just be like tiny, like 40-word boxes for like a million different games.
Yeah.
So you're like, this is the one thing in Super Mario 2 that you can do, or whatever. You know? And that's
funny.
Yeah, the internet is, I guess, super good at breaking those things open. Straight away. But thinking about going back to ARGs, like I remember like the most effective ARG I've ever seen was like the Halo 2 or 3 stuff. I think it was Halo 2 actually, the I Love Bees thing, because Bungie made a big deal, like who make Destiny now. They were really good at that ARG stuff, like pretty ahead of the time, I think, when it came to particularly AAA game developers doing interesting storytelling in their I Love Bees stuff. I won't get into why it was called I Love Bees.
Yeah. I don't actually remember it.
So what it was like, without going too deep into like the lore of the Halo series, because I don't know why that's stuck in my brain like everything else, but like, essentially it was an ARG that was set half in the modern day and half in the future through some sci-fi kind of things, which was supposed to be to explain how the bad guys in Halo 2 found Earth, basically.
Okay.
And so it was a mixture of like real telephone box stuff in the real world. But the idea is that like essentially like an alien AI from the future had infected some nice little old lady's beekeeping website in the present, which is a kind of daft idea, but it started with someone I think posting in like a tech forum or like a Yahoo Answers board, like something's gone wrong with my mom's website. Like, can you guys help?
Oh, so they started off like off on the periphery of
like
the whole
super
project.
on the periphery of it, and so it pulled in people who had no interest in games, like no interest in Halo, which is at that point was just a sci-fi shooter, and eventually like people started to find audio files which were part of like they basically recorded an audio drama, but that was set in the future, and it was like audio files this AI had pulled back with it through time. So it's like,
that's awesome.
and that kind of all tied in together in the end, and then it was such a neat idea, and I remember that finding it super compelling. But I think because the internet was still relatively new to this stuff at the time, there wasn't the kind of like there wasn't like a vocabulary for ARGs at that time. There wasn't like the impulse to like, okay, well the first thing we do is check the source code of the website. Second thing we do is check all the IP addresses. Third thing we do is check every audio file and image for a kind of encrypted string of some kind in the JPEG. You know what I mean? Like right now it feels like if you tried to do that now, it would be solved in seconds, and it took months at that time. Just because of the,
totally.
Not the technology, just the
disconnect.
Just the fluidity of people think about it now.
Experience.
It's like, we know everywhere you could possibly hide something in a HTML web page. You know what I mean? Like this is everything you could possibly hide something in.
And there's whole communities now just set up to work on this stuff together. And it's almost all stuff that is solved way easier in a group. If you have 20 people on it, then it just becomes
you can
more than
divide
20
and
times
conquer.
faster.
Yeah,
So it's like if it's searching an environment for some button, you can kind of do 2 square miles, of some map or whatever, as opposed to the whole thing.
So how are you guys feeling ahead of launch? Because I mean, I was surprised that you were here. Tom said that when you came in, given that your game launch is at this point less than a week away, 6 days.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty, like, I don't know, it's kind of weird that it's happening. a bit tense, sort of, like tomorrow the initial embargo lifts on like small, first looks and I don't think reviews actually, but
kind of previews and
so we're going to see like some stuff and like obviously, understandably, I guess I'm a little bit, tentative at seeing what people think, cause we've only heard the good stuff, people who message us saying that they like it. No one's messaged us and said that they don't like it. Some people said that they don't know how to do things, which is great, which means they're trying. But yeah,
it's a positive look. At least you're trying, though. Well
but yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I'm really excited. I'm just trying to not think about it too much.
Okay, I'm sorry I invited you on to talk exclusively about it.
For me, it's the same as well. I have no idea what I'm supposed to think.
Right, yeah, of course.
Because
I think it's, I was surprised that you weren't madly busy, and then I remembered, of course, you're on console, so you have to be gold, like, how long before
months
launch?
ago, obviously the PC is slightly more flexible with all that stuff.
Yeah, so
because we have access to the build uploading, so we could, Sean can just go like, boop.
I don't.
Your entire experience has changed. Whereas on Xbox currently, it's not quite the same process. They're a little bit more sort of hands-on with what goes in and goes out. Yeah, I don't know what I'm supposed to feel like. I've never released the game. We don't know if we're gonna be able to afford to, not get a job in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
We don't know whether we got to think about going to the Bahamas and, in the next couple of weeks.
Which is obviously mandatory.
Exactly.
We have to.
We can't afford it. We have to.
I mean, I know that, for Tom, the period of just doing donuts in a speedboat, like, that takes time. Like, you've got to plan for it.
Idea.
It's like,
I'm taking that.
I'm actually, what I, kind of gather from, my own experiences and also a bunch of other indie friends, a thing I heard was warned about a lot was kind of like postpartum depression, basically. Like, you release the thing and then there's nothing in your life. Like, the big thing that's occupied you for so long is gone. I didn't have that, cause I had so many other ideas I wanted to move on to. Like, I was desperate to, start something new. But, I just got really stressed about tech support, and I didn't really have a tech support problem. It was a tiny percentage of people that had any issues at all, and most of them I could fix, and other ones I could get help with. But it was just, it's just a heightened period of your life. You're just like, everything is turned up to 11. And so if there's problems and I've got those people's money and at the time there's no refunds policy, so I couldn't give it back. I just had to like
get on it,
feel terrible about like, about that, you know, try and fix the problems. And if I couldn't, and just like, fuck. And that just completely stressed me out for,
still got your money.
Yeah, and so I think like whatever you would normally be feeling, you'll just feel that, but ramped up to like 2000%.
I'm excited for that. I'm going to Bulgaria in 2 weeks. That should be fun.
Cool.
Just kind of decompress a little bit.
Yeah.
For a weekend.
For a weekend is enough.
I mean, this is what we've come to expect as like a break. A weekend in Bulgaria. So looking forward to the long break.
It is going to be great. It's going to be fantastic.
I mean, this is like coming up to birthdays. It's like a holiday, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's beautiful up here.
It's beautiful outside. It's beautiful outside where we're not. Look at it, how gorgeous it is. Get to enjoy none of that next week. Stay refreshing. So, so I mean, I guess maybe your plans are dependent on how things go both next week and in the future, but what is, you know, with game one done, what is the hope? Like, what is the ambition?
It's been
the dream?
Like a slowly ongoing discussion. We've got ideas, you know, like we want to carry on producing games, like without a doubt. And how we do that obviously depends a lot on the success of this. So I think just looking at all the routes available to us there, I don't think I'll ever do anything else like willingly. I think, like I want to make games for the rest of my life, I guess. I really enjoy it. So
yeah, there's so many different options, and it's kind of, it all depends on the money. Cause you kind of, once a game is done, you're kind of starting from scratch in many respects. Even if there's money involved, you still have to put concepts for other games together. You don't just have another game. You have to start again in many respects. So, and you know, we might need to then find more money on top of whatever we might earn, you know. So there's the whole process could start again. You know, we've had ideas also about trying to open a studio somewhere in South Africa,
right,
and trying to find people down there, because they're kind of stuck so far away from the games industry. And there's you know,
there's so much talent, digital arts, like all sorts, man. And it's just totally isolated, and they don't have like inroads into the industry at all.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned Naughty Dog earlier, actually, because a South African friend of mine moved to California to work for them. He's, I think, like an environmental physicist on the Uncharted series and stuff. But like that was the distance he traveled to make use of his skill set, basically. Yeah. I think it was environmental physics and art. But yeah, like.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah, it's just so far out there. But you know, all that stuff is, we don't know. Apparently we'll know more on Wednesday.
Yeah, and then Thursday and Friday and Saturday and Sunday and Monday, et cetera, et cetera.
So
cool.
Yeah, I'm positive, man. I think it's going to be great. I'm like super proud of us. We made a game.
Yeah,
it's cool.
How big is the team actually? I know there's G2. Is it just G2? Is it?
Well, it's us two. Okay, so Magic does the art. I do the code, game code, and then our friend Vicente Espy, or Tuddy, or Beat Vince on Twitter, he does all the music. He's fantastic. I kind of grew up with him. It's been a pleasure to work with him. And then Alex Darby of Darbatron Limited, he lives in Leamington. He's done the platform ports, the console ports, and he's, I don't know, man, he's fantastic. He's such a great guy to work with. And then there's Ian Hardingham, Paul Kilduff-Taylor from Mode 7, James Hannett, Robin Cox, also Mode 7. I think that pretty much covers the broader team.
That's the main group of people that are.
Oh, no, and Alex Hayes, of course. Sorry. Alex Hayes, who did the writing for the game. That's kind of the team.
Yeah.
Man. That's not a lot of people for 18 months.
Yeah.
I was meant to ask actually, what were you guys doing before this, given this is your first game? I realized I never asked that.
I was doing, iPhone app development.
Right.
In Shoreditch for a company called Hi Mum Said Dad. Great little, mobile marketing company. And then before then I was kind of traveling around Europe, growing my hair. And then before then I was in South Africa working on mobile apps still. Before that I was probably a little bit smaller than I am now.
We didn't need the entire...
You could stop that.
Yeah, I was also same media. advertising, digital media, UX. Did some indie projects, digital art stuff, and some sort of social media games stuff. So there was a bit of lining up. And all the while I'd been teaching myself 3D. So that's how we were in shape to kick off and hit the ground running.
Yeah.
With the help of Unity, of course. And its platform, which makes certain things a lot easier. It does make it harder when you get to the technical ends of the project. When the requirements, and your sort of, when you hit the boundaries of it, you then have to, then your experience shows, which is something we didn't have. So that's when we hit the walls.
Turns out the easy implementation isn't always the most optimal.
No, not always most optimal. And that's what Unity doesn't help with later on. You'd have to do it all yourself.
Right.
Eventually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So should we do some news, video games, internet news? We're still in. Well, we're gonna make the hat trick here for chatting about Far Cry 5, which is apparently what we do in the weeks preceding E3 before there is actual video games news.
Yeah, they really got us good on this one.
They did, yeah. This is how to trick the Crate and Crowbar to cover your game repeatedly, which is like leak, then rumor, then
one per week.
Yeah, and then series of teaser trailers, finally box art.
Yeah,
Far Cry 5.
To be honest, we'll probably mention it next week as well, because you listening to this will be doing so on Friday or later, and we're recording this on
Thursday.
Yep. The other day. And they're going to release some kind of big reveal, I guess like a gameplay trailer on Friday, and so you will have seen that, and we haven't.
Thanks for pointing out how irritating this is going to be for people who don't know more than we do, as we speculate wildly about it. Let's speculate wildly about it.
Anyway, it's not cowboys.
It's not, but isn't it?
It's not a Wild West setting.
They probably have cows around.
Yeah.
And it's Montana.
So it's
modern day Montana.
It's modern day Montana, and the box art features very heavily either a cast of kind of like, dastardly racists.
Essentially. I mean, there's a guy in the foreground.
More or less the only kind of racist.
There's a guy in the foreground, there's a table which looks like, the Last Supper or whatever.
Yeah, I guess it's a Last Supper thing.
And then in the foreground there's a guy facing away from you, and he's got his top ripped off. And in the back, it's cut into his back, I am a sinner.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
he's now being punished by, I guess, whoever is.
So they'd like twisted Christians.
It's like
this seems like Christian
extremists.
Extremists, yeah.
However, I think because, and which is not totally out of, I think it's a really interesting direction for Far Cry to go in, but Far Cry, the last couple of games have all been about, apart from Primal, have all been about like, sort of like extreme people in extreme places. You know what I mean?
I think that was their tagline.
You know what I mean? Like, from starting with Vast in Far Cry 3, which is all about like, we're going to tie you up so a man can extremely effectively mocap a speech at you about something.
Yeah.
I mean, they've basically all been like, supposedly charismatic leader who's crazy, with a cult who follow him like, devotedly.
Ubisoft have a little bit of a weird track record on this, but only because they have the Clancy license. And the Clancy license is like hyper right-wing fantasy. It's like, what happens if, like, I'm gonna crib a line from PC Gamer's Phil Savage, but like, the plot of The Division is like, the day the money went bad, and we had to shoot the poor. Like, there is that element to it. But I think, Ubisoft have always, in their other action series, Assassin's Creed and Far Cry actually, despite some of its missteps, there's always been like quite a strident kind of anti, maybe sort of a liberal angle to their games. There's always been a sort of, it's not ever been eloquently expressed, but we're talking about video games.
Yeah.
So like, but there has always there have always been a relatively progressive company, and I don't think it's totally surprising coming from them. And also I don't think it's totally surprising that this isn't going to be a compelling setting for people to fight in. Cause also, I mean, it mirrors a theme in video games generally, of video games, particularly AAA video games, following pop culture at a slight lag. And, we've just had like, it's very reminiscent of Justified as a kind of modern cowboy thing of, that kind of thing. Obviously it's quite different to Westworld, but that's the same sort of like,
Well, yeah, it's
exposing
like comparing
the flaws in the kind of American
wilderness fable.
Thinking about the expectation of, we were thinking it was going to be Wild West, and now it's this. I'm glad it's this, because like Wild West has done little enough that it's somewhat welcome, more so than like zombies. But there have been a whole load of Wild West games, and Justified is an existing TV show, but there hasn't really been a game of it. So I'm happy to have a game of it.
Yeah, and obviously there's no confirmation that's exactly what it will be. I think the thing that maybe concerns me a little bit is that GTA 5 does the kind of hillbilly biker racists out in the desert or out in the wilderness thing already. And I mean, I have some issues with GTA 5's plot and writing and its cynicism and some of its kind of, it plays a lot of things for laughs, and there's sort of no human heart to it, and that's kind of, a thing. But games have kind of been to this territory before. I think it's kind of important to remember. And this, there's nothing about that lineup of characters that they've shown that necessarily suggests to me that this is going to be a Justified style kind of character piece. About those things. Like, I'm a little bit concerned that you look down that line of characters, and they're universally like dudes in their 20s or 30s with like thick beards and aviator shades. And these people, I mean, yes, you can sell them to me as like a Last Supper style lineup of evil, cult, far right, religious extremist cultists. They could be opening a cereal cafe. Like, just looking at them, like,
very thin, especially the guy in the middle. He's got like silly coloured shades.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, he's the one that made me question. I was like,
they got thick beards.
Pretty hip.
Yeah, they got
it's Montana or Shoreditch.
Yeah, they've got extremely thick. They've got thick, luscious beards, but like top knots and like short back. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like, this could go one of two ways.
Kind of like a more queer version of Lost in the Damned.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they have a wolf, but whatever. Like, there's one man in that piece of art who's like very pointedly stabbing a steak, which is like perhaps protest too much. Like, and like there's a degree to which it's presented with a kind of it's rule of cool evil hillbillies, basically. Like, it's not
So maybe there's some sort of twist on them. It's not necessarily going to be like sort of some sort of KKK sort of overtake.
They're a San Francisco startup that's gone horribly wrong,
and they decided to go far right.
Yeah, exactly.
Under the influence potentially of drugs, and
drugs are inevitable.
Yeah,
like, there's going to be a meth trip sequence in this game.
Something like that.
I can guarantee it now.
There's going to be horses. Sorry,
I quite like the idea of what the poster shows is like quite individual characters. So like maybe they're all going to have like a really strong narrative. And I don't know if you played Wildlands. I know Magic finished it 100%. Like
I hated it, Wildlands. Really? Yeah. Do we have to fight about that now?
No,
Okay.
no fight. Okay. No, I'm a sucker for collectathons.
Okay, fair enough. That's fair enough. Yeah.
But they did that great thing where you've got that spider map of, dudes to take down.
Nodes, yeah.
So maybe they've kind of taken that idea into this as well, where like everyone on that Last Supper table is its own character that you kind of...
Yeah, I mean, actually, Far Cry...
Montana has been taken over by 9 identical hipsters.
Well, Far Cry 4 and Primal both did this, where there are sort of bosses for each region.
Right.
And there's a whole lot of outposts, which are the kind of general things to take down, but then there's a stronghold or a fortress, and that fortress will be from a named plot character. And sometimes you have to like unlock them through the plot, but other times you can just take them whenever you like.
But what Sean's saying is quite interesting, because with their covers previously it was always the single baddie.
Yeah.
It was Vars in the first one, and then it was
Pagan Men.
Pagan Men.
Yeah. And
so
what
they're doing with this is that they're showing that maybe they're going to put more focus on a set of characters, as opposed to kind of putting it all on the single one.
Well, actually, I would love to see that and see who the Judas is if it is an actual.
Yeah, maybe that's the player character.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, that would be kind of neat if you're going to make something about like Christian extremists. Then having a kind of biblical mirror for the plot would be kind of neat.
I think So this is a stupid question that I have, but I was. Because obviously they'll have extremely extensive, like, mocap cutscenes. Like, that's inevitable. These characters have to be extremely charismatic in their evil way and emote at you and tell you a story about something, right? That's going to happen. If you were mocapping someone who has a thick beard, does the actor have a beard at the time?
Do you think they have little dots on the
where
beard?
did
Yes. Did they put ping pong balls on the beard?
How do
or
they
did they
stick
add
to
it
the beard?
like I want to know to what extent this is all a grand lie, essentially. Like, did they add, did they have like clean shaven actors in sort of skin tight ping pong ball wetsuits performing these characters? Because they're also uniformly lushly bearded. And I don't know how this works. And
I'm gonna go with skin tight.
yeah.
like
I mean, the skin
shaven.
tight is the rest of it. But
Yeah, shaven.
Yeah, like clean
Yeah,
shaven
I think you
dudes.
can project forth a beard. You can extrude a beard from a head
Well,
mesh.
there's
They need the
something
data
to be a
underneath.
beard tech department. Yeah, like, if that's the case, there's definitely a team of beard men.
I mean, it's games development. It's all teams of beard men.
I mean, I haven't quite gotten there in trying to figure out how all this stuff works, but I know that Andromeda had huge issues with their hair tech in general.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was, because it's shader based stuff, and whatever. But I know that beards these days, there's high demands on, the tech behind beards, how they operate, obviously the player customization behind it. So they would have had to have invested a lot of resources into not only the beards on the cover, but obviously in the game. And this
beards.
is something that we can project. There's going to
Diverse
be
cast
some
of
pretty
beards.
heavy beard tech.
Yeah.
I would have thought beards are generally pretty easy as video game hair goes, because they kind of conform to the thing that video games have sort of done as a matter of convenience for head hair, which is helmet hair, where it just
Sure.
like your hair just completely moves with your head, and a whole load of hairstyles do fit that. And
But you say
but
that,
any
but-
hair that moves is fucking.
But
difficult.
what if they are the first company that does, high-tech beards, and then you never look back, and it's like they've set the bar.
Ever since that dangly, swaying Far Cry 5
Gorgeous.
Yeah, exactly.
The landscape was forever changed.
This is the thing. So actually, another Ubisoft game, For Honor, does have long knotted beards in it, and now for the life of me, I can't remember if they are physics enabled.
I
'Cause
bet
if they're
there's
not,
a jelly
I think-
bone in the bottom.
Yeah.
there's going to be a little give at the bottom of that thing,
Yeah.
but like not a lot.
I've
Just
seen-
enough to give you the effect.
I've
yeah.
seen I think in the Uncharted series we were playing through a little bit was, with ponytails, they do like a sort of, it's stuck to one, like the bottom of the beard tail or the hair tail is stuck, but then there's play in between, so it gives the illusion of movement, but it's actually just like the stretching of the model.
All the people who've watched the gameplay trial tomorrow and know how the game actually works are going to love this.
We're possibly a bit too long.
Inside
on
the beards.
Well, I think they're going to, for me, one of my projections is that they're going to join the illustrious group of games with horse traversal. Because I know with Primal they started
makes
with riding animals,
Yeah.
which they hadn't done before in the series. It was all vehicles. So this
Far
is
Cry 4 had elephants.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
true.
yeah.
You could
True,
ride the
true.
elephants in Far Cry 4.
But what is an elephant but a big animal car?
yes, it's true.
And certainly the mammoths in Far Cry Primal probably shared some of that tech.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. I think,
But with beards on.
recently,
Yeah, what is a mammal? What is a mammoth but an elephant with a beard?
Exactly. That's where the beard tech began.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like they've just felt a little bit missed out of the club because, with Zelda now come out and the horse tech being an epic and that, obviously with The Witcher and Metal Gear Solid and, you can't really be a AAA without, a representative horse.
Trusty steed.
Horse
So I
ambassador.
feel like
Is this-
Ubisoft,
Is this why you decided to go with motorbikes for Tokyo 42? Because in a way, it's a horse, but
Yeah.
without the demands of beard tech.
absolutely, yeah.
Exactly.
Trade secrets, but yeah.
So,
Yeah, we really know nothing about this video game.
Yeah, very little. I'm excited.
I mean,
to
we
see.
say that though, but I think all of us have played the Far Cry,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we know exactly how.
Yeah, exactly.
it's
How
going.
great would it be if they just like totally changed it somehow? Like how?
It's set in one church. There
Yeah.
are 4 idiots.
It's fucking over. Done.
Yeah, and it's like a chamber, theater, and you've got to somehow survive your way through QTEs.
Yeah, like theological debates.
Yeah, it's like
QTE theological.
meet us in reasoned. Let's reasonably
Quick theatre
reassess
event.
our reading of the Bible and what it demands of us, and we will come to an agreement on that, and that's how we will proceed. Far Cry 5, and then a meth trip sequence.
Yeah, I mean, that's what interested me about that real life clip. It kind of represented this really bleak environment with a really strong narrative element with this guy running across the field. And my experience of Far Cry is, and I'm a sucker for those kinds of open world games is you fall into a rhythm of, collecting skins and this and that and doing missions, and sure, there's the excitement of the first couple of hours where you're kind of being led through stuff. But after a while, it's this kind of repetitive experience, and you either enjoy it or not. And they haven't really changed that much. I never installed Primal because I kind of knew what I was going to get in for. So really, as you guys are saying, I'd love them to do something new.
Yeah.
I'd love them to kind of say, yes, actually, it is a very big, sparse experience. And we've somehow made that entertaining. I don't think they'll do that, obviously. They're just going to, it's a reskin. We know this. Using the same base engine, etc. But yeah, imagine if they took some sort of great step and just did like the spatial thing. They looked at Red Dead Redemption, and said, we'd like the space of this game.
Yeah. Or something more like True Detective, and it's about kind of like coming to terms with your own kind of place in the psychosphere.
I mean, that's the kind of area I'd like to see them change something. I don't want them to change the kind of, the outposts in Far Cry games are my favorite things in video games, basically. I absolutely fucking love them, and I will do them, as many of them as they can make. But the main mission is always just this necessary evil. I've just got to play the fucking hour of this before I'm allowed out in the open world. And then if I want to unlock certain abilities and stuff that I've got to get to a certain point in the plot, that has got better with each one, actually. Far Cry 3 was pretty bad for that. Far Cry 4 was a bit better. Far Cry Primal is really pretty good. There's not much that's hard locked off by the plot, and the plot is not nearly as intrusive and annoying as it used to be. But yeah, I'd like to see them. I just wish the story stuff was kind of, if they just recognize that as being like one vector on which people can enjoy this thing, and they made it totally optional, and put more work into making it interesting.
So you mentioned the open world, and it's kind of made me think about, it's probably safe to assume that Ubisoft does like resource sharing, right, in between their IPs. And one thing Magic and I have talked about at length is the procedural tech that they use in Wildlands. So they have like this, supposedly this great system where they have these kind of set piece cities or whatever. And then after that, I'm going to oversimplify and say they click a button and it creates like these amazing landscapes with like roads and everything in between these set pieces. And I wonder, and that's enabled them to make that massive space that Wildlands is. It's like, it's
that game was
enormous.
I say I bounced right off that game, but that world is extraordinary.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the reasons I didn't like it is because I didn't feel like the game matched the amazing place they'd made.
I struggled with it because it was so vast, and I was like, I don't know how much money they would have thrown at people to make this stuff. And then we found out that it's primarily a small team, actually, of 4 dudes that, apart from the art teams that were making all the assets, which is, there's a fair amount of them, but it's primarily generated, including the cities. Apart from, as Sean says, they had cordoned off areas where they'd have like sort of story-based missions or whatever, and they had sort of custom-built things. But they, when they updated something, it would ripple through the whole world, and it's the same as working with a terrain editor, but just taken to the nth degree. And I guess what you're saying is like, maybe they're starting to
maybe we'll see Far Cry 5 as like twice the size of previous Far Cry.
That's not impossible.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't think they'll do this, but something that I'd love them to return to the kind of light touch storytelling of Far Cry 2. That's not going to happen. Like the kind of in your face nature of that Last Supper cover art tells you that's not going to happen. But
there's going to be some pretty extensive church scenes and hangings and blah, blah, blah. We can see it all coming.
I'll probably put money down that there'll be a crucifixion, right?
Like,
ooh.
Genuinely
on fire.
I probably wouldn't take that bet.
Fire-based crucifixion.
Whereas actually I realized this after I said it, that like the other detail I really liked about Far Cry 2's setup, which I thought was super interesting. I don't know how much they meant by it, but I always appreciate when games do this kind of like political engagement or engagement with history in a way that's really subtle and doesn't kind of Tarantino it up for audience consumption. Is the flip side to the thing I said earlier about every character you can play in Far Cry 2 not being from the country that they're from is part of it. But all of them are from countries that have suffered from like internecine violence after the collapse of European empires. And that's universally true. There isn't an American character and there isn't a British character. The closest to it, like a European character, is Irish, which is has a certain context. And there's actually there's a subtext in that game of like, you are someone who's from a country like this, entering a country like this.
Right.
And that is actually quite sophisticated video game theme making, right? When it comes to like, particularly what the series has done since. Like, if you think about the gulf of sophistication between, I think you can play as a Indian or Sikh or Pakistani mercenary in the game as well. Like, there are definitely nationalities and historical conflicts represented that we never see in video games.
Never seen and haven't seen since.
Yeah, exactly. Haven't seen since. Whereas everything subsequently has been far more broad strokes. And even when those kind of historical themes have been represented, as they will be in this game, because it's obviously touching on some very raw historical, not historical, contemporary themes, they will be presented as big entertainment, right? Like,
there's a Sikh character in Spy Party, I'm obliged to mention.
There is a Sikh character in Spy Party.
I've seen him.
Yeah. But like, but not, again though, they're not explicitly in that context, right? Of like, we're talking about countries torn apart by war in this particular way, and we're going to just feature characters from those places. Like I don't trust that this will necessarily be, anything other than the sort of the Tarantino version of that particular set of historical ideas.
Tarantino meets Shoreditch.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, Quentin Tarantino's Serial Cafe Massacre is the full subtitle.
Poison Milk.
Yeah.
Fruity Loops.
We've done a lot of podcasts. We haven't even gotten to what we've been playing.
No.
We haven't, but we should. Let's do that.
Cool.
Who wants to go first? What have you guys been playing, Tom?
I have been playing Off-World Trading Company, which is the RTS made by Soren Johnson, who I mentioned earlier, who is the lead designer on Civ 4. And he went indie after that, and he made an RTS that is entirely about resource gathering and trading those resources, and it has something like 12 resources or 14 or something. And that's it. You just kind of mine those, you sell them. You can't attack your opponents. You can do certain sabotage things, like disable some of their buildings or whatever. And that's been out for some time now, but they just recently released an expansion called Jupiter's Forge, which is set on Io, which is one of Jupiter's moons. And it's a kind of, I couldn't swear to what the correct term for it is, but I want to say volcanic moon. Like, it's a lot of lava and stuff.
Sounds about right then.
And yeah, it's, so the expansion is like, basically a bunch of new maps and 2 new factions, and, the maps that it has, if you play on those, you are playing with a slightly different set of technologies because you would need different apparatus to kind of make anything happen on that world. You know, they're both about terraforming to some extent, or not so much terraforming, but like, you know, using specialized technology to get human valuable things out of an alien world. And the way you do that on Io is different to how you do it on Mars. To be honest, the new stuff, I think the new kind of, resource gathering system is somewhat interesting. But it's mostly just been an excuse to just replay this game, which I really liked at the time.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, dude, you go for it.
No, I never kind of bought it because, I didn't feel the price was right for me. It just felt a bit expensive because the last
That's
time
actually a very thematic reason not to buy a full trading company.
Yeah, the price, when I last checked, which was a long time
If
ago.
enough people buy it, the price will drop.
It was
and then...
$34.99 or something, and I couldn't justify it at the time. But I looked into the gameplay a lot, so there has been some fairly extensive gameplay overhauls or changes.
No, I wouldn't say that. I would say that, like, fundamentally, for every resource, there's a building that you can build to produce it. And on Io, those buildings are different and have different relationships. So there is no water on Io, no naturally occurring water of any kind. So you can never mine water. The best you can do is use a solar condenser and build that on a patch of ice, which has no like resource value necessarily. Like all bits of ice are the same, and it's really kind of inefficient. You are using up, I think you need fuel maybe for that. And basically, like, producing food on Io is even harder than it is on Mars. You need water. Water needs fuel and oxygen. Okay. Oxygen can only be gathered from ice, which is in very rare patches. And your kind of chain to producing these resources is different. So the kind of balance of it is different. I wouldn't say they've overhauled like mechanics or sort of the fundamental thing about it.
But they've brought some fresh air.
Yeah, it's like whether you should
No real
get
air,
it.
though.
I saw what you did there, and so did you. We all saw what you did there.
Well done.
So it's a weird game in that there's a whole bunch of different ways to play it. There is now a daily challenge, although I can't say that really interests me because it's my problem with a lot of RTS games, or my taste in RTSs are very based around the fact that I will never be very good at them, and so I don't want to play online. And I don't really want to play the daily challenge because I'll just be horribly outclassed by everything. And so I just play against the AI, and usually on very, very easy difficulties. And with Offworld Trading Company, I've slowly worked my way up to, I think I am one below the difficulty the AI plays at. So that's the difficulty where it's actually fair. And then above that, it starts to give the AI advantages, and below that, you get advantages. But the advantage of things like your stock price is slightly higher, so it's harder for them to buy you out. And that kind of stuff.
So I was going to ask, I mean, assuming it is an economic simulator, right? So like all this stock sort of management stuff, that's obviously super important. Like I imagine, like, I don't know, I'm not an econophile. I feel like should be a word. But like, I'm not. So I wouldn't know. There must be ways of like playing a market, right? You know, like where you sort of, lay out the resource of, that's required to create a separate resource, make it super cheap or whatever,
Yeah.
Is there that sort of mechanic to the base game?
That happens. One of my sort of criticisms of it was that it seemed to happen the same way every game, which was that food just ends up being mega, mega important and incredibly expensive. And so you just go into food. You just figure out a way to make food. And like I say, food requires water.
To keep your industry running because everyone needs food.
You will need food anyway. You only need a little bit. So to supply yourself, you wouldn't need to produce much food at all. But because everyone needs it, the price for it keeps skyrocketing. And it's the only thing that reliably just goes up in price every game. And the price per unit for a resource caps out at $1,000. And food will almost always get there and nothing else really will. And so you might as well make food. And there are whole loads of techs that are really good for that. And I found myself doing basically that every game. And then I had one game where, so the price, you can do like sort of, trading tricks where, I mean, really it ends up again being the same every time, where I will produce a whole load of food and I won't sell any of it. I'll just keep it.
Right.
Because the price keeps going up because no one's really selling very much. If I sell some of it, the price goes down a bit. And so even if I really need the money, I won't sell my food. I'll sell everything else. I'll sell other things that are already not that great in price, and then when I sell them, they tank in price completely, and my stock becomes valueless. But I don't care because that's not how I'm going to make my millions.
So the simulation sounds like it's quite accurate, right?
It is reasonably. There's something I didn't understand about the game, and if people know the game better than me, they can correct me on this if I'm wrong. But I think I was always confused about like prices are going up and down and everything, and I don't really know what's causing that. To some extent, I know that if a player sells a whole load of something, it'll crash in price, and if they buy a whole load of something, it'll spike in price. But you also get told, there's a surplus of food right now, and so the price is plummeting, or there's a shortage of oxygen, so the price is skyrocketing. And I thought that was like the game organically doing that. And from playing more and more, I'm pretty sure it's only fake shortages and fake surpluses. There's a thing you can build called the hacker array, where you can pretend there's a shortage or pretend there's a surplus just to change the stock price. Just to change the resource price for now. And so you spike it, then you sell all your stuff and you get a better rate.
Right.
And I think that's the only time it tells you about surplus. Like all the rest is just organic fluctuations based on what people are buying or selling. And anytime, the reason I came to this conclusion was I was hoarding food. I was making a whole load of it. My enemy was not making any food at all. And it kept telling me there's a surplus of food. And I'm like, I'm the only fucker with any food and I haven't sold a single apple.
Do you know?
And the enemy had a hacker array and there would just be a surplus of food every like 3 minutes. And I'm like, I think there's a surplus of food. I think we're actually doing pretty good on the food front. And so, yeah, I think that's just the hacker array. And then everything else, the problem is like, you can look at what your enemy is doing. There's no like fog of war or anything. But it's pretty hard to kind of reason about, he must have 300 fuel or he must have a stockpile of this. That's a lot to look
at and try extrapolate from, like building, patterns.
Yeah, in practice you just kind of can't. So I only had one game where food was not actually the sort of money maker. And my enemy had gone into food in a big way. And I had started going to food as usual, and then I saw that the price was actually not climbing as high as some of the other things, and in particular water, which I need to make food, was priced higher than food. And I'm like, well, this is silly. I'm just converting an expensive thing into a cheaper thing. And my enemy had loads and loads of food stuff, and I thought, I've got this stockpile of food. I'm just going to sell it, which will A, make me money, cash me out of a thing that I'm not really interested in making anymore, and also it will crash the stock price of this thing that he's making loads of. And so I started to feel like, oh, I'm doing like proper trader jerk
things.
things.
Makes you feel super cool, right? Yeah.
It did until I realized he has 2 space elevators, which lets you sell your products off-world.
Right.
And that is why he was making food, because the price of food off-world was fucking huge, as always. And so he was... the fact that
way ahead of you, buddy.
Yeah, so the one time I got to do something different and didn't make food and didn't win that way, it was futile anyway, because he was still selling food at a crazy price.
Right. Sounds deep.
It is. I still really enjoy it. Like the fact that it's the same every time is actually, most RTSs have strategies that are kind of dominant.
Yeah, it's like generally consistent.
Even if the objective is just to make as much food as possible, there are still different ways of doing that. There are things like if you get a patent lab early on, then you can patent the transparent aluminium technology, which means that now you can use aluminium instead of glass, which is way, way cheaper, and that lets you build a space elevator first, so now you can sell your food off-world before the other guy. And so there is still interesting things to do that way. And it is really satisfying to buy people out. Because it has this very interesting,
get to feel like Tom Cruise or whatever on Wall Street. Yeah.
It's an interesting comparison to other RTSs where, some RTSs you have to eliminate the opponent to win, like a single player, like Dawn of War or something. You just have to completely crush the opponent and then the mission's over and it moves on. And StarCraft single player missions have victory conditions like that. StarCraft multiplayer, someone surrenders at some point. And in Off-World Trading Company, the way the game ends is you buy someone else out. And whether or not you have enough money to do that is kind of left pretty ambiguous. Like you can buy individual shares. You could sit down and do the maths, like on a calculator. Okay, if 1 share or 100 shares cost me this much, and I need to buy 4 more at that price, and then when I've bought half of them, it'll turn into a block of shares that I have to buy, and those are an inflated price, and, I don't know how to work it out, but it's probably possible. In practice, you don't do that. You just have to, if it's 24,000 per 100 share, I think it's going to be about 350k for the final chunk.
It.
So if I have 3 of those and then the question of do I have enough to buy them out is literally the whole game. If you do, nothing else matters. It doesn't matter what price,
just
how.
Click the buyout button and
exactly.
It's done. Yeah.
You don't have enough cash on hand to do it ever, but you could sell all your stuff, right?
Yeah.
And usually you wouldn't want to sell all your steel because you need to build stuff, or you wouldn't want to sell all your water because you're using that to make food. On IO, you can't make oxygen except when the sun is out, and the days are something like 46 hours long.
You've got to make oxygen while the sun shines. That's
what they say on IO.
People say that. People say that all the time.
Unless you get the patent that lets your solar condensers run all night.
They don't say that.
But anyway, you don't want to sell.
Small print.
Yeah, exactly.
There are reasons you want to stockpile and you don't want to sell it, unless selling everything you have would make you enough money to buy out your only opponent, in which case the whole game is over right now. And so I think it does a good job of making that end phase of an RTS not boring. It's, if you are over that threshold, you just literally click the win button. It's just all over. If you are not sure, you can keep making stuff and keep making your lead better. And if you're the kind of RTS player like I am, where you kind of, even after you kind of know you've won, you actually just want to make your stuff better and just make your system more efficient and make even more money. I had a game the other day where I was playing as the robotic people who they don't need any food, but it's still worth going into food because everyone else needs food.
Yeah.
But also they don't need any fuel because they use electricity for everything. And so you can kind of get out of some of the more expensive things that end up draining your money. And I'd tried them a couple of times and just the map didn't lend itself, or I fucked up. One time I didn't make an electronics factory, and as robots you really need some electronics. And I just...
Turns out.
I literally just got to a point where I was like...
basically their food.
They eat their own kind.
Robot cannibals.
So it's kind of like for advanced buildings, you either need glass or electronics, and for robots you need electronics. And I hadn't got my apparatus to build that, and I just got to the point where it was going to be quicker to start a new game than it was to build that now. And then I finally figured out robotics, and I had in a game of that where it just went really well, and I managed to sort of simultaneously go into food and stockpile a huge amount of food, and that price skyrocketed, but I also had a whole load of water and fuel, and those were hugely expensive. And I also made 2 space elevators, and I could sell my stuff on Earth for a different price. And steel was incredibly expensive on Earth, so I was able to make a huge amount of money from steel.
So wait, so this game really gets you into trading. I mean, I'm getting the sense.
Yeah.
It's not famously a sort of fascinating game sort of space, but this has really got you on board.
Yeah.
Is that all 3 of the nouns in the game's title are important?
Yeah. So that was a situation where like I had won like, 15 minutes into this game, and I probably played for another 15 minutes after that because I was like, but look how much I can win. Like, look at how I've completely cornered these markets.
My victory lap. Yeah, the Bahamas victory lap
I've been playing a RTS. Well, I've decided it's an RTS called Forts. I don't know if you heard about it. It's like I think it's an indie game. I don't know actually much about the production studio who
Did it just arrive in your house one day?
No, I was watching a streamer that I watch. I watch a lot of streams, and they played it as like a sort of group game. And the premise behind the game is you get started with a base that has a core, and you kind of build like in a polybridge style. You build your fort up, and along with that, you put weapons on it, and then you have to operate the weapons and shoot down the enemy's fort. But so much happens so quickly that it ends up feeling like quite a frantic RTS sort of
Kind of
experience.
like a build ordery.
Yeah, like, you got to do things really quickly. And I actually bought copies for everyone in the household so that they would enjoy it too with me. But we haven't got around to actually properly co-oping it. But there's great co-op and, multiplayer sort of team-based modes. But you guys haven't heard about the game, so
It kind of looks like Worms when you first see it.
yeah.
Right, I think I have heard of it.
But then it's got. Have you seen bridge building games?
Yeah.
Polybridge,
So it's it's got an element which looks like Worms and a bridge building game combined. So it's
2 naturally opposed elements.
Yeah.
Yeah. With full physics bases, so you hit some strut and it might kind of topple your base or whatever with your arced mortar or whatever.
Yeah, and they actually really play into the, the architectural side of it because, at some points in, an architectural structure, it's all basically trusses that you build. And they've got like great easy mechanics to extend your trusses and won't go into it. But, like Magic says, if you hit like one of the key points in the base, the whole thing will like pivot down and crash and you're dead, But also you can build things slanted so that sniper fire will bounce off because it's, proper.
Gets pretty deep
It gets
pretty quick.
deep, and it all happens. It's not like a super long experience because, the multiplayer scene is already quite developed, I think. So, and there's no real elo in the matchmaking. There's no matchmaking actually.
Right.
So like people are good at it, and you play and you die quickly. Because it is like that RTS sort of rush vibe where you're building your base, but then some people focus on, building the technology to get a cannon together and just decimate you. But it's a great game. It's worth checking out. I don't think it's very expensive.
That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
I like the idea of, basically, because is there an element of, like, not Twitch skill, but like skill to the deployment of those weapons? Or is victory kind of like a foregone conclusion if you have the right things?
No, it's definitely got an element of strategy to how you place things and stuff. Like one of the mechanics is you kind of put your weapons inside your base, where you protect it behind a door, that like a steel door. And anytime you want to fire that weapon, the steel door opens automatically, but then that weapon is not vulnerable. So if they have like a machine gun or that's been upgraded to a Gatling cannon, and they just fire in that general direction, that weapon's generally going to die. And for example, there's a mortar weapon that you can use that shoots up, but machine guns will automatically shoot them down.
Right.
But if, for example, you have your machine guns behind closed doors, and an enemy fires mortars, your machine guns will open their doors to shoot down the mortars, at which point you can then snipe out the machine guns. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
because the doors are open, sort of thing. So it gets pretty deep. I mean, I've seen it kind of go that way, but also generally it does feel like if you get that weapon quickly, it is kind of over.
Right.
Unless you like good at countering it, I suppose. And there are ways to, so.
What state is the game in? Is it out, or is it early access? Is it?
It's out.
Right.
Now.
It's hard to say because
actually, I'm not
they've got a little campaign.
Yeah, it's
and
out.
They've
It's
got
out.
multiplayer. Yeah, it seems out. It seems
it's
pretty
out.
out.
It's quite out.
How out does it seem?
No, it's definitely a couple meters out.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing, we got a PlayStation for the first time. So we've been smashing through just like every single top end PlayStation game out
Exclusive.
there.
PlayStation
So Naughty Dog
exclusive.
stuff, so Last of Us, Uncharted. But we're all playing them simultaneously. We've got Horizon Zero Dawn as well.
Yeah, we were literally playing Horizon, Final Fantasy, Last of Us, and we're on Uncharted 3 currently.
All at the same time.
All at the same time.
Just trying to gobble up all the PlayStation stuff.
Every third-person action adventure you can possibly stomach at the same time.
Yeah, and then on PC, I'm playing Project Cars.
Cool.
We mentioned gateway drugs sort of off air earlier, but
we were talking about Warhammer, to be specific. We weren't talking about drugs at all.
well, yeah.
We talked about drugs on the podcast.
But GTA got me back into racing.
Right.
Of all the things that Grand Theft Auto does, it's weird that it's got a very hardcore racing scene. And I was enjoying the cars in that game, enjoying earning and buying the cars, and found some YouTubers that are super into the racing. And that's been a gateway into, I moved very quickly. I went onto Forza Horizons on PC, which is fucking amazing. And then, now I'm on Project Cars, which is like my first sim-ish.
Yeah.
You know, I know that the hardcores will, debate that.
Cars, man.
Yeah. But I got a head tracker. So now when I turn my head, the guy in the car turns his head, and was a fun 50 quid to spend. Seemingly fairly worthless, although it does aid with the immersion.
It's funny when I come into a room and ask you a question and you look over and your whole screen like totally whack and you're like, what's going on?
Yeah, and then the last thing was finished just playing a couple of short games. So we played Journey and What Remains of Edith Finch, which are fantastic because you can just clock them in a sitting and be done with it and feel satisfied and walk away, you know. Away. You can walk away.
Yeah, you can leave.
Yeah, you can leave.
You're not that guy who 5,000 hours later is leaving an angry Steam review saying that for some
Fucking
reason...
Edith Finch. I've been playing this game 5,000 hours and I've just run out of content. I can't believe it.
It's done everything. Look, I felt every feeling. Look, I really felt it 6,000 times. I just can't feel it.
I think the main thing
no
for me
metagame.
with that game is that it's a game about death and different ways in which it happens. And it's kind of awesome. It's kind of fascinating. There's different perspectives.
So fantastic. I mean, the craft in that game is so evident, right? For me, I didn't play it. I watched it being played, which is actually a tragedy of games like this. In a way, but it's such a meal for the eye and the mind. It's a great thing.
There's a lot you do get something specific from playing it yourself in that you like in each sort of scenario because they're all so different. You don't know what you do in it yet, and sometimes just the process of playing around with that. There'd be scenes where I'm looking at the scene and I think it's non-interactive, and then I realize, oh no, wait, I can control this thing.
Yeah.
And
What is my role in this tragedy?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Sean pointed out an interesting thing there because we watched it. It was a really strange setup because I bought the game and played it just kind of by myself because it's whatever 2 hours, I think.
Yeah, 2 hours.
And then we always watch Twitch when we're eating food, and we sat down and Lyric had just switched on the game. So as I finished the game, I went to go eat dinner, and then I just watched the whole thing immediately afterwards. And then Sean watched the game, and he was like, well, I don't really need to play it now, because I've just watched it. So Sean didn't get the game, because there's no point really. I mean, yeah. And that's why you say it's a tragedy. And it's a game company that took 7 years on the game. Small team, I think it was like 8 people.
Yeah. And it shows.
Yeah.
Like it shows when you invest that time and resources in something like this. Like, that was the surprise for me. I think we spoke about it when it came out, but it wasn't just the craft of the game. It was the fact that it has the capacity to keep surprising you as you go, which so few games like that can do.
Yeah.
Because, with any other game of that sort, which is sort of putting it in the same category as Gone Home, Dear Esther, Stories Untold, that kind of thing, there's an element of like, oh, I've seen what the remit of this game is now. Even if it's a 2-hour experience within 10 minutes, you've kind of gotten its method for delivering the story and things will change and your emotional journey will continue, but you've seen its things. Whereas I think the reason Edith Finch stands out to me is because even in its last act, you are surprised by what it is doing and how it is doing it. And that's, I guess, what makes it for me. Like we're very close to discussing this as we were coming back up to keep recording the pod, but like that's what separates it for me from other games in that category, including Gone Home and Dear Esther, is that I have not felt that kind of like engaged all the way to the end. There's definitely been a point with other games of this sort where I felt, okay, I can't get how you're telling me the story. Now tell me the rest of it so that we can sort of tie a bow on this and leave it. Whereas with Edith Finch, I was kind of excited to discover how it was going to end things, and not just how in terms of what would happen to the characters, but how in terms of like
how they were going to
materially,
tell that
like
story.
how
what am I going to be doing next?
Yeah, what am I going to be doing when this ends?
See, now we promised not to debate the Dear Esther thing earlier, and that's part of the reason why I think Dear Esther was a better game, because Edith Finch, whilst it was fantastically crafted, it was all these separate little things, and I didn't think of it as it was a great single product, but personally, because these are very emotional journeys, you know, they are artistic experiences, and it's, you know, we go back to the debate, but I felt Dear Esther was more elegant. And that's why it stands as one of my favorite games ever. Because it is just so simple, and it doesn't have some surprise around the corner. And that's, you know, it does what it does just kind of so cleanly. And it doesn't have what I would say is sometimes it's sort of gimmicky things. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love them in Edith Finch and love the thing. But for me, it kind of put it on a lower rung of the sort of the high art element.
You almost said hoity then. Yeah. You were so close.
About to say hoity-toity. I've had a couple of beers. You guys have fed me.
That's what we do.
Old crafty hand oak-aged vintage, which really went to my head on this hot day. It's
dark and malty.
We have one beer left that we have to fight for. No, I actually agree with you on that. I think it came from, for me actually, because I do agree, because I fell in love with Dear Esther when it came out, because it was at the vanguard of this kind of thing. I think the reason Edith Finch had the same impact is because it felt like a meaningful sort of advance. Like, I think it would actually in some ways benefit from figuring out which mechanic it was about. Maybe even being even shorter, right? Like, you know, maybe all games should be 15 minutes long, but
just the swing death.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again, spinning around on a branch.
Exactly. Like, but there was a sense of, and I think maybe the reason this stood out for me is because, I may have said this on the podcast before, but when I started playing it, I was like almost immediately over it. Like, part of me in my head was not writing, but like thinking the thing I would say on the podcast, which is that like, I love people making these games. I love that games can be about more things. Why are all games about a quirky family on the Pacific Northwest coast of America? Like, why is that? Or, like, you know what I mean? Like, where is the thematic variety here? Where is the kind of going? And then the game completely called my number on that because it went in a completely different direction from what I was expecting it to go. I think because Gone Home had primed me to expect a certain thing.
I had exactly the same thing because it opens with a forest walk.
Yeah.
And I was like, I mean, I'm totally down for this. I've got an afternoon to spend.
Yeah.
You know, I just want to walk through beautiful forests and, you know, have Dear Esther with more effects, you know, and, you know, newer tech. But it did, as you say, kind of.
Yeah. Well, because I mean, the very first scene of that game is being on the ferry on the way across the Sound to the forest.
Yeah.
And like, I've been on that ferry. Like, I've gotten a ferry across the Puget Sound in Seattle, and I kind of know that environment. And I know that a lot of developers are based out on, you know, in Seattle and environs and in Spokane and in Washington and Portland. And so there's a sort of like, oh, okay, we're going to get another story about this. Like, you know, and I like, you know, I was into it, but not like all the way into it. Yeah. And then the fact that it then threw off my expectations and suddenly I am an owl was like, oh shit, cool. Like, it was such
a tumbling
big
shark.
Which is sort of maybe equivalent to the effect that Dear Esther had, years previous, where suddenly it's enough to be like, actually, it's just this. You're just having a walk, you're just listening to a story, and that is the game.
Yeah.
The two effects are almost equivalent because of the way they defy expectation, but they only work in the they have that impact in the context in which they arrived, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and DS didn't have anything like it before, so there was
exactly.
nothing to measure it against.
Well, I remember reviewing Dear Esther for PC Gamer. It was one of the first reviews I did as like a very junior writer, and I had to, like, it was difficult because people, you know, at that time, I don't think the apparatus of game reviewing had really adapted to the idea that you had to explain
that nothing happens.
Yeah, you had to explain, like, there are no guns in this. Like, I mean, my background, you know, I was very new at PC Gamer at that time, and my background prior to that had been in the theatre, and I felt very comfortable describing it in theatre terms. Like, I still think Dear Esther in some ways is a one-man Edinburgh Fringe show delivered in a novel way. It really is.
Essentially.
Like, you know, it's a monologue. It's a monologue performance, delivered in an interesting way. And, you know, I can describe it in those terms, but it was really weird having to go like, and I need to specify for the benefit of the audience reading this, there are no guns, and at no point aliens show up. You know, you genuinely don't do quote unquote anything.
And you can't fail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Except in your ability to interpret the story.
and as a player of that game without knowing anything about it, I played it like, I think maybe 3 years after its release, but like, I remember thinking like something was gonna come around the corner, man. Like, where's the game? Where's the game?
Yeah.
You know, like,
where's the monster?
yeah, exactly. I was like, oh, there's ghosts and stuff, aren't there? You know, like, oh, and then you get to the end bit and you're like, oh, wait.
Esther's a cyborg.
Yeah. That's fantastic. And it's like you say, I mean, if nothing had come before and no one could describe it and there was no apparatus in the review.
I mean,
it's like,
the whole genre makes me wonder, because we played Journey as well recently, and you know, our friend Other Sean came over, and
is that how you refer to him?
Sometimes I'm Other Sean, I guess.
Yeah. Depends how good you've been.
And he's kind of like quite anti-violence in games, even though he's basically Binding of Isaac guy. He's got like more, like all the fucking achievements, and he's like endlessly in the womb of some, you know, mother.
So as long as it's tier-based violence.
I don't know how, I've never played it.
Worst sentence on this podcast.
I don't know what the game is. I don't know what the setup is. It's something to do with that sort of thing. I don't know.
You shoot your tears at enemies?
You shoot your tears at people
what
inside
it's
a big colon or a uterus, or I don't know.
Yeah, it's something like that. But he was so attracted to the fact that you can't die in Journey. You experience, it's a spiritual experience, more than anything else. You know, the skill in that is about how you relax and how you think, as opposed to, you know, how quick your reactions are, or, you know, what your strategy, your war strategy is. I still, you know, it's still this thing of like, there's obviously so much space and so many people who haven't had the gaming medium, give them what allows them to express themselves, or the play that they are really into. Because a lot of people are turned off by shooting, are turned off by, strategy and having to think fast and this sort of stuff, the stuff that we all love, you know. But yeah, it's just, the doors are still there, and they, you know, Gone Home and, Edith Finch and Dear Esther and Journey, they kind of creaked them open, but like, there's no AAA that's really jumped on that.
Yeah. I think that's the reason that I would happily put Edith Finch in front of people. Yeah. Because the plurality of experiences that it offers kind of impress something that games can do that other media can do. Yeah. But like, the reason I say that, like, I think Dear Esther would work as a monologue delivered on a stage, or would work as a short film, or, you know, there's a few other contexts that would work in. I struggle more to figure out the other media that Edith Finch would work in. Yeah. I think as a consequence of the fact that it is, as you say, a fractured experience. Like, there's a lot of different things going on. But I think that's, you know, that doesn't make it objectively better. But I think it means that as a case for games, it's the one you go like, look at how many different competing ideas can be brought together in one thing with the common factor of you can interact it and kind of.
Well, you're responsible for these things.
You can make these terrible fucking things happen over and over again. A million different wacky contexts. It's your fault, idiot.
I mean, that's what I felt. There's a death in it where, you know, spoilers, but you're a kid on a swing and you're trying to. I mean, the whole thing is about a family that dies in tragic ways, an accident, sort of horrible accidents. It's kind of like a series of unfortunate events sort of set up in a very similar location. But yeah, you're on a swing, and, you know, you as a kid, you wanted to, do like the full 360 over the bow of the thing, which is, sort of over a cliff as well.
Exactly.
So you kind of controlling the forward and back motion, you're trying to build up the speed of the swing. And very quickly you kind of, because there's a narrative that's going over the top, there's someone sort of with a sort of dub over the top. You kind of know that this is going to end badly, but you still kind of go on. You kind of like,
yeah,
I'm swinging and it's like, it's quite a rush actually. I felt slightly nauseous because it's really beautifully executed.
That's the head dragging.
And yeah,
I was just thinking that actually.
And I'd hate to do it in like VR or something, but there is a line where it's like, okay, that was, the whole experience was great, but now I'm going to end it.
Yeah, exactly.
And you kind of just like, I know it's going to be bad, but I'm just going to go and push through. And
I think that's a weird thing the game doesn't quite reconcile, is that you're kind of like, it foreshadows that stuff so much.
Yeah.
Like, and you still do it because it's like, well, I'm all in. Like, how much of this are you going to show me? Like, it's a strange position to put the player in, where you know it's inevitable, but you do it anyway because you know it's how you progress.
Yeah.
It doesn't give you another option if you're like, and then you got off the swing,
and then you stopped.
Yeah, exactly.
And no more game happened. Yeah. What were you playing?
Yeah, what have you been
What
playing?
have I playing? So I've been playing. I played a bunch of Prey, but we're going to talk about that on the Specials Prey spin-off pod that will be out this week as well. I did. I've been keeping up with Dawn of War. I think it was mentioned earlier, Dawn of War multiplayer. I don't have a huge amount to say about it because it's getting a big patch this week, apparently, which is not out yet. And I say that because this is going to be another instance of I was really wrong about a thing. I just want to, return to the podcast every now and then to be like, that thing I said, that was dumb. So when I first started playing Dawn of War multiplayer, I was really impressed by the way it felt like. There didn't seem to be like an alpha strategy, a fixed meta, a one way to win, a kind of a specific way to play that would necessarily give you a huge advantage. And I was impressed by the way that, for an RTS particularly, it kind of managed to have some drama right through to the end game. It didn't feel you have that moment where someone else has just won and you're kind of going through the motions as they enjoy winning, which is what we discussed in Off-World Trading Company. All of that stuff was totally incorrect. It was so incorrect, in fact, that the developers themselves put out a kind of, expressed intent for what their next patch was going to do, which is that we're going to fix that exact thing that Chris was wrong about. Because that is totally a problem for the game. I just missed it. Like, it was, I think maybe I acknowledged this was possible at the time, but it was totally that thing of like when everyone's new to the game and everything seems possible, you see all these strategies. But like even a few weeks into the game's life, it does feel very prescribed. And so I went back to it, and I quickly realized that like, my kind of like homebrew strategy for how to begin a match as Space Marines and kind of build up my defense, is bad. Just bad, really. Like, it's just not good Space Marines.
Work.
So to take a thing from the tabletop stuff I do, there's basically no such thing as an overpowered unit. There's just an undercosted unit. Like, you can have anything at any power level as long as it costs you the right amount to get it.
Yeah. And
the balancing of that stuff isn't quite right. So, there are the most efficient things. And if you don't have the most efficient things, then you're at a disadvantage. And that's
you
flat
lose.
Out. Yeah.
Not getting them soon enough.
And then disadvantages stack up over time. Like, the disadvantages aren't so pronounced that it ends the game immediately. But they're pronounced enough that it will make a difference 20 minutes in.
Is there like an inevitability?
Yeah, there is a sense of like, I can't win this now. And that stuff all, and so this is not going to be a long bit because my experience was to go back in and play about, 5 or 6 games. So, we're going to go do some questions now. Our first question is from Phil, who writes, "Toot toot." To be fair, that is not his fault. That's how I ventured questions might be asked. Are there any features in games past that you feel could be explored in better detail now, but seem to remain unused?
Features?
Yeah, like stuff games tried to do in the past that they haven't tried to do since, but modern technology might enable. I can give a quick answer to this, because it's the answer I go to whenever people ask a question about games with amazing potential that probably deserve a sequel or any kind of variant on what hasn't come back. And the answer is Terra Nova, which was a
sort of open, like, I guess a precursor to things like Armor, actually, in some ways, like a kind of joint arms military simulator, albeit sci-fi. But
was it sort of Delta Force era?
yeah, actually, but it was sci-fi themed. It was almost Tribes 1 era. But it had the idea that you would command all of the different parts of a kind of big sci-fi battle separately. So you could jump into an aircraft, you could jump into a soldier on the ground, you could be a big mech, you could be a tank, and you would kind of coordinate the battle doing all of those different things as kind of was fun to you and made sense to you strategically. And I can't think of I think there's some scope within the Armor games to do that, but it's not kind of the way they're intended to be played. You're not supposed to be like leaping between bodies. I can't think of it seems like a concept that deserves higher production values than it could get in the late 90s.
Yeah, I will say, you just reminded me that Armor released this patch, which was called the Zeus patch, which allowed you to real-time level edit, sort of during a multiplayer match. So it felt a bit like what was that? It wasn't called Primal. It was some kind of savage or something like that. Yeah. And there's been a few RTSs where you have a player kind of controlling the game as if it was an RTS, and then you had some guys on the ground doing real-time stuff from a third person or first person.
And Natural Selection does that a bit too.
Yeah, and with Zeus you can set up the what's happening from a god view, and then you can jump into those units. But it's not a game. It's like an addition.
Carrier Command was the most recent take on that I can remember. Where it was a remake of an even older Carrier Command, but you had a carrier, and the carrier could launch both aircraft and also just tanks. The amphibious tanks could roll out of it, and you can control any of them anytime. AI wasn't that great though. Like as soon as you left them, they would fail at pathfinding and get stuck. The thing I would actually like is so Die by the Sword did like mouse-driven sword swinging, where you sort of swipe the mouse to swipe, but it was all kind of inverse kinematics, where your character would, try and sort of physically do the same motion as you. And it didn't entirely work, but the idea of, precisely chopping off an orc's arm and stuff was good. And you could do that in VR now way easier.
There's been a couple of attempts, I think. What was that? That writer Neil Stephenson.
Clang.
Oh yeah, didn't that fail though?
No, but what was the game you were playing?
What, a sword fight? Oh, Exanima.
Exanima.
That's a fantastic, like a sort of isometric physics-based, sword fighting game. It's in all inverse kinematic stuff. It's great. I think it's still in early access potentially. But it's really weird to control. They've got a totally new take on that kind of style of game. It's worth checking out. Exanima.
Is that its full title?
Yeah.
There was a Kickstarter for an RPG that had something, I can't remember the full title. The thing was mostly Latin, and one of the words was sounded like the word mundane, so it wasn't a great title because it made it sound like it was boring. But it was just a bunch of Latin words, and it was very physicsy combat.
Possibly it got, reevaluated, that name choice.
That would be good, actually.
Yeah, because it's fairly distant
from what re-examined it.
Re-examined it.
Nice.
We have really had a long afternoon.
Yeah.
I'm going to punt our game, Tokyo 42, a little bit.
Could have been done way better today.
What we've done is, in terms of old mechanics, is we felt like that some old games that had a top-down perspective, there was more that could be done from that perspective. So what we felt like one of the things we've done is we've added verticality to, I don't know if you remember like GTA 1 and 2, like it was top down and you kind of had this, you could climb up ladders, and get on tops of buildings, but it was all still kind of on a 2D plane, essentially. You didn't have any vertical.
You were a slightly bigger spriteman.
Yeah. So it gave this illusion, and you could never really do stuff from the tops of those buildings. And that was one of the things we wanted to do was like, I love that old perspective, and we all have that sensible moment of seeing those soccer players running around or, the cannon fodder thing. And that could be taken so much further. And I feel like that's one of the things we wanted to explore when we were playing the game was like, what if third person or first person was never discovered and that we were locked in, a top down, quite far view, where would gaming have gone, and we wanted to take like one step forward from, games in the 90s, and hopefully a few more steps as well. Yeah. Because like imagine a AAA making a game from that perspective, you know?
Yeah. Exactly.
I guess we've seen it a bit with GTA and the races, you know,
They just released that new DLC.
Tiny
right?
Races DLC. And Codemasters are redoing Micro Machines.
Are they?
Yeah, they just announced
Fantastic.
that. So
That was one I was thinking of because, I mean, the question kind of takes you back a bit to try to think of old classic games.
yeah.
I was thinking like Road Rash.
Yeah.
I would dig to play like a new high fidelity Road Rash, even though it's probably going to be limited by its arcadey sort of scope.
Yeah.
I'd
So
love
just
to
smashing people on bikes.
Yeah, but like in like a really nice high fidelity sort of way now, you know.
So
like
what, Full Throttle Remastered wasn't enough for you?
No, Full Throttle Remastered was awesome, but that's, wow, that bike fighting mechanic is so difficult to enjoy. Yeah.
So the next question is a relatively serious one, and I guess just a difficult question, but one worth asking. I think this week particularly. It comes from Ian, who writes, "Dear Crate and Crowbar, usually I find emails to you very easy to write, but I admit that I'm struggling with this one, so I'll keep it short. I've been trying to play Tokyo 42 today, so it's kind of pertinent. I mean, we did mention that you guys are coming on the podcast, so maybe Ian knows that. But because I have to review it, but it isn't easy. There's no reason why its cartoon violence should feel any different today than before the events in Manchester, my hometown, but it does. My question is, are there ever games you find you can't play because of events in the world or your personal life, or you're always able to separate the two? And what do you think about how games tackle terrorism generally? Has there ever been a convincing title that attempts to get a handle on what might make somebody commit an atrocity, or is that beyond our medium? Love the pod, Ian." So I think it's a good and valid question to ask. Not of you guys specifically, but of the medium, basically.
Well, I mean, I'd like to address our game just sort of specifically a little bit.
Of course, yeah.
And sort of, as we discussed, we actually paused to decide whether or not we'd answer this question, because it's very tricky territory.
Of course, yeah.
And I don't know if we have a very good answer to that from sort of a Tokyo 42 perspective. You know, when we went into making the game, it was kind of, there was very little questions around the morality of the violence and stuff. It was kind of like, you know, we're making a game, and, you know, a lot of the time when we're in games, we're shooting stuff, and, you know, this is our first game, and it would be fairly, pretentious of us to not make a shooting game in a way, you know, because it's kind of like if we took a step initially and went, no, we're above all that, you know, because I've enjoyed shooting dudes in their faces for many, many years. And, you know, that seemed to be kind of like a logical first step. There wasn't very many questions asked. And we kind of ran head first into it. You know, I think the setup of our game, it kind of has that GTA thing of you can shoot civilians, in the game. And that really kind of puts into relief, a more serious element of, and I think that's, you know, it's one of the more serious elements of our game, is that that's possible. We've tried to post-rationalize and put some elements in the game where, you know, these guys don't actually die. They've got nanomeds which repair them.
And in fact, that's a very, very important hinging point on the whole narrative of the game.
Yeah.
Is that there's a corporation which keeps people immortal.
Right. Yeah.
You know, through the use of a medicine that does bring them back to life after you shoot them, and you can observe it in the game.
And life as a commodity is kind of like one of the core things of this thing. So that's the way we get away from. But at the same time, I like after this week, it has raised a lot of questions around all that sort of stuff. It has been like, you know, just shooting stuff is difficult, you know, and I was playing Horizon Zero Dawn, and it's like, God, why am I killing these robot machines? And specifically in that game, it's because they're so well animated, and they respond so kind of tragically, that you kind of, and, you know, and I felt like, you know, maybe it's the higher fidelity that makes it more impactful. And I struggled with it. But yeah, you know, in general, like just this whole week has, you know, we've had a lot of back and forth because we're trying to release the game, and it's like there are PR questions around our game. Even though it is a cartoon version of violence, and, you know, for the most part, you're attacking baddies, you know, but yeah, I think it's a fairly serious one. And, in terms of like the actual question, personally, there's been a couple of instances. I can't really recall. I think it was actually GTA. There was a few violent episodes in GTA 5, which I just couldn't play. I just didn't want to play them.
Yeah.
There was a couple of torture scenes, which I was like, I just don't want to be that guy doing that thing. It was just too real, and it was like too close to home. But yeah, sorry, that was, I
think that's, I mean, like for me, I had the similar experience in that, like Call of Duty basically lost me when it became a modern day thing because it's just too close to things that are actually happening, and I still don't feel that that's an appropriate thing to make kind of spectacular pop culture out of. And I appreciate there's a degree of hypocrisy in saying that, yes, it's okay to tell those things about World War II, but not.
Well, my other question around that is that, and we spoke a little bit with Far Cry, is like, is it okay if we go just do that somewhere else?
Yeah.
Do we feel okay if we're going into Tibet and, and doing whatever? And does it only suddenly become a problem if we're, in some place we understand?
I think the problem for me comes when you're specifically referencing real conflicts for effect. More so than even just real places. It's when it's, you're kind of utilizing some aspect of real political factors or real kind of historical factors to kind of base your game in, but then kind of spinning them in a kind of, I mean, this is the reason, to go back to a subject from earlier, it's the reason that I had a problem with Wildlands is because it's the Clancy thing of saying like, what if a real thing, but on steroids? What if a real thing, but they all had EMPs, which is the kind of typical Clancy plot. When these things weren't happening close to home with the frequency that they are, it was easier to write off the things that happen in these games as fantasies. The Wildlands' problem is that its ideas about kind of mad hyper-military cartels funneling arms into America arrived at a time when that stopped being fodder for paperback military thrillers and became actual policy. Like, you know what I mean? In one of the most powerful countries in the world. And that's where games and any other form of pop culture lose control over their own narrative as soon as they step into that territory. And so as soon as Call of Duty stepped into the Middle East, for example, I felt like it lost control of its own tone to a huge degree. Whereas when it was located in World War II, that's something that we have, sufficient distance from as a culture to tell stories about that don't necessarily, and I appreciate there is a hypocrisy there, but it doesn't necessarily fit the same criteria as my reasons for my ongoing discomfort with that era of Call of Duty games specifically. But I suppose this regards games in, I think there's still, and it's still perfectly reasonable, I think, in the aftermath of something shocking like a terror attack for people to just not want to participate in violent games. Like, that's a perfectly reasonable thing to decide to distance yourself from.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's been one of my feelings. I don't like, today I was like thinking, oh God, thank God for our age rating,
Yeah.
on our game, even though we're trying to push it down to increase the market. But at the same time, it's like, even though it's a cartoon thing, it's like, geez, like this stuff is real, and, yeah, age ratings are important and good.
Yeah, indeed.
In a way, I think, the feeling that Ian expresses here is like in a way, I think it's a great indication of what games are, because they are subjective experiences at the end of the day, right? And they provide like an ability for you to like funnel things that you feel into the experience you're having with the game. And if you manage to marry the two in such a way that it means that you can have a unique experience in the game, so I mean, it's in the example of Tokyo 42, it's unfortunate, and I don't, it's just the way it is. Unfortunately, the game can't be positioned in any other space.
Yeah.
Otherwise it becomes something completely different. But, what he feels and the difficulty for it, totally understandable. And I don't think that he should force himself to review the game for that. Wait a while, if it's uncomfortable, then yeah, totally don't force yourself through it. And I think there's a lot of things, like there was that, game called That Dragon Cancer. Like, I can imagine that hits home for a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same reason I wouldn't, recommend it to someone who's lost their child to cancer, or maybe do, I don't know, but either way, it's a
very difficult decision,
it's
right?
a difficult thing to do, like.
When we were at Rezzed, we were sat next to, I unfortunately can't remember the name of the game. These two guys had made, it was a difficult game.
It was a fantastic game.
And it was about the death of, the one dev's brother.
Yes.
I don't know if it rings a bell.
Unfortunately not.
Did it take place in a series of sort of vignettes with like a black background.
Yes.
And there's kind of like a pseudo E3
You were
type.
on the opposite side of us at
Right.
that one.
It was at Res.
I also can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, unfortunately, and it was a fantastic game. It's kind of like a first-person, sort of felt a little bit like Stanley Parable setup. You're going through a lot of corridors and stuff, and it's all kind of like low lighting, and but it was about the death of one of the devs' brother. I can't remember to what, but a few of the friends came and sat down and played it, and we were sat next to them, and they walked away. I mean, there were people in just shattered in tears, and, shaking, because they kind of had such a personal experience through the whole thing. And as Sean says, it was kind of like, we are reaching a point of fidelity where and we do respect the medium enough that we do take it seriously.
Yeah.
And serious questions, I guess they have to be asked. We'd hate to do it, especially when we're making a game about jumping off buildings in Tokyo. It does have to be framed, especially at a time like this and this week, in England. We do have to frame it with that. We can't avoid the fact, that there's shooting in our game, and, you throw grenades around and you kill baddies and whatever. And, it's just, yeah. I mean, we don't do that in life. It's not something to be done. And yet we're doing it in games.
The name of that game was 321.
321.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, check it out. It's pretty heavy.
Yeah, it's a great game.
It's, I don't think it's necessarily an answerable question necessarily because, we have the freedom to tell stories about stuff and incorporate stuff as pop culture and as entertainment that is distasteful in another context, and that context is important. It doesn't invalidate the experience of someone who finds that stuff uncomfortable in the aftermath of real events, but I don't know, there's a bigger discussion I don't necessarily have answers for about why conflict has an enduring appeal as a basis for entertainment, and why hyper-stylized conflict is just a thing that we're used to in so many different contexts.
Games are special in this way, but there's threads of this running through other mediums. Like, I know you and I are both big fans of murder mysteries, and it's just like, when there's this weird thing where that has become such a incredibly palatable, civilized, respectable, fun form of entertainment. Is like, someone got killed, let's find out how it happened. Like, it's so lighthearted and so frivolous on TV that we're so disconnected from that. And I'm sure if you have like a loved one who's been murdered, then it takes on a completely different tone.
Suddenly a whole genre that makes its entire basis out of like someone gets killed at the bottom of the garden, and the rest of the show is going to be a characterful detective of some kind gathering clues, becomes wildly uncomfortable. Not insensitive in the way that it's conceived, but uncomfortable to watch. And, this is the thing. Like, I'm not going to land on an answer for this after a couple of beers in a very hot room.
Yeah. Like, I don't think there's this, what we're talking about is relativity there, isn't it? It's like, if it's something that's far away from us, we can play with it. If it's something that's close, we just can't.
Yeah. I mean, this actually makes it more so a shame that we lost that Edith Finch discussion, because during that discussion, we were, and lost to time, we were explicitly flippant about the fact that it is a game about death and about a kind of supernatural, unfortunate series of events that befalls a particular family. And it is enjoyable in a kind of macabre way because you know what's going to happen to people. But again, if you have lost a loved one to any kind of tragic accident, I imagine that entire game is kind of unbearable, not just because of its, direct subject matter, but because of the way it presents it. The idea that
it's a game.
A series of unfortunate accidents can be a kind of interesting structural motif, rather than just a shit thing that happens to human beings. Like, it's tough. I think maybe our medium hits it more than other mediums necessarily because of the participatory element, and because conflict is perfect for games. Because if you guys were making a multiplayer game about trying to figure out who in a crowd is a potential enemy and how that is the basic rule set that you want to generate interesting game drama from, then suddenly crowds and guns and physicsy grenades and things become the game elements that allow you to express that. And it's just and I think, I can say this because, didn't work on your game. I think your art style helps a great deal in that context. The fact that you've distanced it so far from, your kind of daytime
Totally.
cyberpunk kind of pastel. Everything is sort of happening in the clouds in Tokyo because it's all rooftops. Like, I've never looked at your game and thought real crowds of people in a real place.
Yeah.
You know.
And the game never asks of you to do that. But yeah, to attack civilians.
But, you know.
But for immersion, it's possible. So yeah.
Tricky one for sure. And a really good question. Just
I mean, just
totally.
as an aside, I think there's something to be careful around, and I really don't know how to put this into words, and I probably will trip up. But we do have to be careful that the medium, does allow things to be expressed, and that it doesn't get shut down due to fear. And I know there are moral lines that always need to happen. And we need to be constantly moving those lines, but we have to just be aware that, you know, it is a medium that we want it to continue to express ourselves. I'm not saying that we all want to go and kill things, but, there's things that we don't know about ourselves yet, that I think games can get closer to, expressing that. And we have to be careful not to shut down those things too soon. Because we are going into feels like a conservative era, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's very easy for everyone just to kind of go, oh, fuck it. I'm scared of doing certain things in games. Due to, you know, it insulting my own interests.
Absolutely. That is all the questions we've got time for this week. If you'd like to send us a question for a future episode of the Crate and Crowbar, you can do so by emailing us at questions@crateandcrowbar.com. or tweeting us on Twitter at Crate and Crowbar. Crate and Crowbar is very kindly supported by our Patreon backers who allow us to do this podcast and spin-off podcasts like Miniatures Monthly, and the standalone podcast is another one of them coming extremely soon, if not imminently as you listen to this, and also allows us to bring cool guests onto the show as this happened this very week. So thank you for that. If you'd like to find out more about our Patreon, you can do so at patreon.com/Crate and Crowbar. You can also find our YouTube videos on YouTube at youtube.com/Crate and Crowbar. And it would be very helpful to us if you would leave a review on iTunes or just, you know, click the engagement buttons. Just engage with it. Do the engaging things on the engaging. I don't know how that works. It's good. I understand that it's good and it'll make things better for everybody if you do that.
Just start clicking buttons.
Just start clicking buttons on iTunes and basically, yeah, that'd be great. Thank you in advance for just clicking buttons on iTunes until our star rating goes up or down or sideways or whatever you feel is appropriate. I found out recently that we're, I think, the 68th most popular podcast in Canada. Okay. I don't know how that works, but apparently
always like Canada.
Thanks, Canada.
Good place.
Yeah. No other territory, just Canada.
Canadians are the best.
Yeah, I think we can all agree on that. If you would like to follow us on Twitter as individuals, I'm C Thurston, that's CTHURSTEN. We'll go around the circle. Tom?
I am Pentact, PENTADACT.
Magic?
I have no personal online accounts, but you can
Tokyo42.
check out Tokyo42.com. Games coming out on Wednesday, 31st of May on Xbox and PC, so check that out.
Do so.
Our game Twitter is Tokyo42Game, spelt as it's said.
Yeah.
And my personal one is Lofar42, LOFAR42.
Did that 42 come before the Tokyo 42?
It did not.
Okay.
And thanks so much for having us.
No, of course. It was great to have you on. You should come on another time, maybe when the holidays are done and the
we'll see what the listeners think.
I'm sure they will dig it. But yeah. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks for listening.
We're getting to the bottom of games criticism here. And I mean the bottom in like two different ways.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there were a few moments in Edith Finch which were like,
and yes, and Dear Esther, how did you feel about that?
That was like,
Damn. Feels good to be in the Hebrides.